And now we welcome those of you who watched the Dolphins lose to the Saints 33-30. And I'm handed another card, and I guess this is correct. The Jets' woes continue. Carolina beat them 26-15. So the baseball audience, which has been with us, has been waiting for you football folks to join us. And now here we are for Game 5, our national pastime. Joey Cora steps in. And Hershiser's first pitch is high and away. Only 5 umpires. The crew chief, Dave Phillips, who worked the plate in Game 1 and would have it in theory if there were a 7th game at the Kingdome, is ill. We have no more details than that. So 5 umpires. Tim McClellan back at the plate. Drew Coble at first. Darrell Cousins at second. Rick Reed at third. And Dale Ford is on the left field line. There is no right field umpire tonight. Foul, 1-2. Albert Bell back in the lineup. Very shallow in left. Kenny Lofton in center. Shading the switch hitter Cora to hit to the opposite field. Ramirez well off the line in right. Tomey, Vizquel, Baerga, Sorrento on the infield. Alomar, after missing last night's game, Pena filled in so well, back to the plate. And a bouncing ball to Baerga. 1 down in the Seattle first. Well, here's an interesting move, Hugh. There's the defense I just told you about. Edgar Martinez from the cleanup spot, where he has comfortably performed all year long, hit .356, won his second batting title, trying to get him on track and shake things up in this lineup. He's in the number 2 slot.
Well, as we said earlier, with Buhner moving up into the number 4 spot and moving Martinez into the number 2 spot, he wants to get Martinez a couple of more at-bats and probably see some different pitches from Hershiser with Griffey and Buhner to follow. But as I said before, if nobody gets out for those 2 big guys, Griffey and Buhner, I mean, they're in the same boat.
Martinez still leads all players in postseason RBIs in '95 with 10, but they all came in the division series against the Yankees.
I talked with Lee Elia, the Seattle Mariner hitting coach, tonight. They did a lot of work with Martinez here at the ballpark earlier, along not only with batting practice, Bob, but with looking at videos, because he has been getting out in front. Elia said he's a little bit anxious, trying to take pitches that he normally would drive to right field and pull, and that's what we've talked about in this series. He's only got 1 hit, and that's an infield single.
Hershiser and Alomar didn't get the call on that one. Now he's back to work 2-1. And a bouncer foul as that pitch just bore in on his hands.
Well, in last night's game, when Martinez finally decided that he would try to go to right field because they stayed away on him. His second time up, they go away on him with a couple of pitches, and then a ball that he's going to drive to right. They bust a fastball in on his hands, a ball that he could have driven hard to left, and he taps weakly to second. He's struggling. He's having a tough time.
And it certainly doesn't get any easier trying to snap a slump against Hershiser. That misses low, full count. Ken Griffey Jr. on deck. And here's a shot into left center. Lofton fooled a little bit by that ball, it appeared, but able to take it around his knees.
That ball was hit very hard by Martinez. It looked like it might have had a knuckleball effect, Bob, and that's what fooled Lofton momentarily. But this kid's got such great speed. He got there in plenty of time and turned what looked like it might have been a base hit or a bad mistake into a relatively easy catch.
Well, you look for any ray of sunshine, and that is something Martinez can feel good about. He hit it right on the nose.
Yes, sir. That's the first time I've seen him smile in this series here in Cleveland.
Griffey takes a ball outside. Homered off Hershiser at the Kingdome in Game 2. And no sooner do we mention it than the boys in the truck cue it up, and there it goes. Right out over the plate. Right about thigh high, and he took it out to right center field. A Ball and a strike. You notice when Edgar Martinez, sat back down, he's always got that bat cradled between his legs. And as soon as I say that, he discards the bat. The first time in the entire series
that was not a bat laying
that he has not gone true to form. There's the bat in the corner of the dugout. Forget the entire point. As the DH, he doesn't have to worry about the glove. Although if they make the World Series, he'll be back at third base, which used to be his regular position. This year he played only 7 games in the field.
Very adequate third baseman when he was healthy, too. That was the best ball he's hit in this series, so I know he's got to be feeling a lot better.
Hershiser being careful with Junior, trying to paint the black on either edge and falling behind 3-1.
Well, he's done that on Griffey each time he's faced him, and then every once in a while, Bob, he'll come with that tough slider down low and inside.
Full count.
There's a fastball. He threw that ball right by Griffey, and as you said earlier, his fastball velocity, Bob, he can throw that four-seamer if he wants. That is in the high 80s or low 90s, and then that sinker, hard sinker.
His sense of what he wants to do, his ability to outthink a hitter, doesn't take a back seat to many, if any. The payoff. Walked him.
Now there's the breaking ball that I was talking about. He goes 3-2, throws the fastball by Griffey, and then tried to get him to chase that low breaking ball, low slider. He also throws a splitter. We can look for that tonight, too, from Hershiser. Not often. The slider is probably #1 for Hershiser, and especially against the left-hander. There you see it, right there. See the rotation, kind of a flat slider. When you can pick up the rotation, as we did right there, when you don't have that real sharp spin, Bob, it's kind of flat. Not a good breaking ball.
Jay Buhner, 7 for 15 in the series. 3 of those hits homers. Cuts and misses. 8 homers for the season. In 13 games, they played just 9 times in the regular season with the abbreviated schedule. And then the 4 games in this series. 8 homers in 13 games off Indian pitching. He hit 40 for the year and had the best hit-to-RBI ratio in the history of baseball. He had 122 hits, producing 121 RBIs. In fact, no one in the league, including Albert Bell or Mo Vaughn, drove in as many runs per time at bat as Jay Buhner did. Throwing hard.
He's throwing hard, Bob, but I'll tell you what. I know he doesn't want to stay upstairs on Buhner. I don't care how hard you're throwing. And that's a ball that Buhner hit out last night, or a couple of nights ago. He hit one off a plunk, a fastball to right center, and a hanging curve off of Nagy. You can throw hard, but I know Hershiser doesn't want to stay up there on him all night long. I know that. Low and away and maybe high and tight on him, but not in that zone where he can get on you.
Well, Hershiser knows from painful experience, Buhner homered twice this year against Hershiser, one in each of Orel's regular season starts against the Mariners. In the air to right, Ramirez coming on. Manny's there. No runs, no hits, a walk. A man is left to the bottom of the first in Cleveland. No score. Bottom of the first, and here's tonight's Budweiser Cleveland Indians starting lineup. Things are back to normal with Kenny Lofton in the leadoff spot. Omar Vizquel, a switch-hitting shortstop, batting second. Carlos Baerga, also a switch hitter at second base. Albert Bell with a badly sprained ankle. Almost a miraculous recovery, because last night they scratched him and considered him very doubtful for tonight as well, but they worked on him both yesterday and today and got him into reasonable shape to play. In fact, good enough to play the field, not just DH. Had he been only able to swing the bat, they would have played Eddie Murray at first base, and Sorrento would have been benched, and Bell would have been the DH. But Murray is in the number 5 slot as the DH, Thome at third, Manny Ramirez in right, Sorrento and Alomar at the bottom of the order. Bob Bosio would like those numbers removed from the screen as quickly as possible. The Yankees used him for batting practice in his 2 starts in the division series.
You know, since he's been with Seattle in his last year or so with the Brewers, he became one of those pitchers that is trying to get you to chase bad pitches all the time. I mean, he tries to start you off the outside corner, and if you start chasing there, he's going to stay there on you. He's got a very good slider, excellent split-fingered fastball, and he's rested enough where he should have a pretty decent fastball tonight. Again, his problem, Bob, he pitches from behind, and I don't care who you are and how hard you throw, you just can't pitch from behind. Guys are going to sit on him all night long and wait for good ones, and they're going to hurt you.
Strange in close, respecting Lofton's speed at third base. Bosio averaged less than 6 innings of work per start this year, one of the lowest averages in the league. But maybe with the full week's rest, he'll be able to go a bit longer.
Well, the one thing he did, he starts Lofton off with a fastball, trying to get ahead of him. Here's the one guy, of course. Everybody in baseball and everybody in the country knows you don't want to put this guy on unless he hits his way on.
Which he just may do. In left field, Diaz, though, has it lined up. This 1995 League Championship Series game is brought to you by Lexus Luxury Automobiles, the result of a relentless pursuit of perfection. McDonald's, have you had your break today? And Texaco Clean System 3 gasolines. Omar Vizquel, just 1 for 15 in the series, has a stolen base and a sacrifice fly, tries to drop a bunt, and it's foul. For those of you who might have been following the National League Series in your part of the country and didn't see the Indians all that often this year, Omar Vizquel can hit .067 from now until next opening day. He doesn't budge from the starting lineup, not with his Gold Glove. They check at third. He didn't go.
You know, at .067, they might think about it, though.
Yeah. Exaggerating for effect, you. Please, some poetic license here, will you? The 1-1. Bouncing ball down at first and right through the legs of Tino Martinez. Go figure.
A routine ground ball hit to Martinez. He thought this ball was going to come up and take a little bigger hop on him. It stayed down. Easy play. Big bobble. Vizquel aboard on what should have been an easy 3 unassisted ground out.
There's too much firepower in this Indian lineup to give outs away. Now you got to face Baerga and Bell. And if anybody else gets on, Murray and Thome, who homered last night, and Ramirez, who hit 31 during the year.
Remember a couple of nights ago, Bob, on that ground ball hit to third by Edgar Martinez, as a matter of fact, that Alvaro Espinosa booted, led to the second run for Seattle. Same kind of a play. A play that Espinosa thought the ball was going to come up and eat him up, kind of handcuffed him a little bit on what should have been a routine out.
Baerga, 314 for the year, 333 in this series, 6 for 18 with 3 RBIs. A ball and a strike. Tim McClellan, the plate umpire, is very deliberate. He's that way on the bases. He's that way when he works the plate. Gives you that delayed call. Vizquel at first stole 29 bases this year.
You know, the other thing, Bob, on a night like this, it's cold, it's windy, it has rained. We may even see some snow flurries here before this game is over. You might find the infielders having a little problem with the leather on the glove becoming a little tacky and a little stiff.
Line drive, Diaz coming on, a diving attempt, and he can't come up with it. Vizquel stops at second. 2 men aboard for Albert Bell.
with a liner to left. Diaz came on and made almost a spectacular catch. As I was just saying, Bob, you know, he had that ball in the glove, and being as cold as it is, the leather getting a little bit stiff, it may have cost him a put out there. He dropped it. And again, Diaz, I've watched this kid, too. He came up through the Milwaukee organization. He's one of those guys who will dive for a lot of balls, gap to the lines, and more often than not, he catches them. But it's cold, as I said. The only two guys in this game that are comfortable right now are Bosio and Wilson. Pitcher and catcher, on nights like this or days when it's very cold, have no problems. You're always moving.
When it's Bosio against Hershiser, Bosio needs every edge. He needs every break. He hasn't gotten them. An error and a play that was nearly made but didn't go their way. In 8 at-bats this year against Bosio, Albert Bell has 3 hits, and 2 of them were home runs.
Well, in Hershiser, you've got a guy with a lot better fastball who's capable of a strikeout. And not that Bosio isn't from time to time, but he doesn't throw as hard. He throws a lot of splitters. And again, he'll try to get you to chase balls down and away or down and in, off-speed stuff.
The 0-1 pitch is in there, 0-2.
Well, you don't see him throw too many there, I'll tell you that. He doesn't like to do that, and especially with a guy like Bell. That was a splitter that was about knee-high and right down Main Street.
Actually, it ran in on him just a little bit.
It was a splitter, and with not a lot on it. See Albert Bell's stance, cheating a little bit. He's not completely in the batter's box. I'm surprised. You know, a lot of times a catcher, although it doesn't really make that much difference, but there are many times, Bob, when a catcher, to aggravate a hitter, will tell the umpire, say, hey, get this guy in the box. I'm surprised Wilson doesn't do it.
Last thing you want to do is aggravate Albert Bell for any reason. There's a bouncing ball foul.
Not if you're wearing a mask and a helmet.
You'd need at least that much protection. In the division series, Kevin Kennedy, the Red Sox manager, in a bit of gamesmanship, asked to have his bat checked for cork after he hit an 11th inning game-tying home run off Rick Aguilera in Game 1. No cork was found, although Bell was suspended for 7 games last year for using a cork bat against the White Sox. Gene Lamont caught him then. The 0-2 inside. You know Albert Bell was really hurting for him to come out of the lineup in a playoff game last night. He missed only 1 game all year. That was late in September, well after they had clinched.
He almost played last night. Right up until game time, there was thoughts of keeping him as a DH.
Sprinting for third base is Vizquel, and he steals it as Bell strikes out.
Omar Vizquel with a big jump against Bosio that time. And, you know, in a situation, I think Albert Bell may be a little bit disgusted. There goes the runner, Vizquel. And Bell, with a pitch coming on like that, Bob, and you're behind in the count, or you got 2 strikes on you, you see that hitter break, and especially here, I mean, there's 1 out, you got your man up there, your number 4 guy. I don't see any reason for running on a play like that. And that's Vizquel by himself, because otherwise the runner at first, Viagra, is at second. So he ran on his own, not a double steal.
So runners at the corners with 2 out for Eddie Murray, one of last night's heroes. A 2-run homer in the first inning off Andy Benes. Benes, by the way, last night probably pitched himself out of any chance to be the Game 7 starter.
Well, you know, we talked about him before the game last night about the fact that he has a lot of first-inning problems, and he did. I mean, his location was bad last night. The velocity was good, but they hit him hard.
The 1-0 to Eddie. Line drive right field. Buhner cannot get there. A run comes home, and as they did last night, the Indians take the lead in the first. Run because it began with Martinez's error on Vizquel's ground ball.
Yeah, the inning should be over for Bosio. There's a pitch, and not a bad pitch at all from Chris. But Eddie Murray right down on it and rips a single to right. Buhner made a charge on this ball. He took a chance here. If this one takes a bad hop on him and gets by him, it's another run. But he knocked it down to hold Baerga at second.
Who do you think has the more menacing game face, Buhner or Bell? They could have a stare down. Well, you throw Randy Johnson in there. Could have some major stare downs. You know, Hershiser gives you that bulldog look, but yeah, he just really looks like a little kid who got mad at recess. Somebody stole his lunch money. He wants them to know he doesn't appreciate it. The 0-1 to Thome. High and away. In contrast to Bennis, who did so poorly last night and maybe took himself off Lou Piniella's list for further work in this series, there's Bennis, who owned up to it. He offered no excuses last night. He said, I felt good, felt strong, just didn't have it, didn't get it done. In contrast to Bennis, last night's starter for the Indians, Ken Hill, pitched so well that he's at least got a chance to work in Game 7. If it goes that far, it's probably Charlie Nagy for the Indians, but Hill figures in there somewhere, if only in relief. Nagy was brilliant in Game 3 on Friday. There's Dennis Martinez, who will pitch Game 6 at the Kingdome. Hill next to him. There's Nagy, who was great in Game 3, pitching on equal terms with Randy Johnson. The only problem is he's 0-9 in his career in Dome Stadiums, 0-5 at the Kingdome, but as of now, he would be the choice in Game 7 if a seventh game is necessary.
Well, Martinez was out here yesterday throwing and said he experienced a little discomfort, and that being the reason for him being held back. But again, he'll be ready. And here's what I was talking about, Bob, at the top of the telecast. Fazio behind. All the innings should be over. He should be out of it. But he's that kind of a guy that just, you know, he doesn't have the overpowering stuff and hates to give in to a hitter and tries to get you to chase. And I mean, you know, hitters know pitchers and what they try to do, and you can only do that so many times before guys just lay back, lay off, and you're pitching from behind.
A hitter's pitch. He takes it for ball 4, and they're loaded up for Ramirez. This has a very foul odor from where Lou Piniella sits. You're up against Hershiser. You give him an unearned run, and you're a base hit away here from being in deep trouble.
And in looking at the way Fazio worked to Thome, maybe figuring, you know, not giving him anything to hit. Oh, it's loaded the bases, and I certainly wouldn't want to put myself in this situation. Now facing Ramirez, who hit 31 this year, and hit 2 in that second game at the Kingdome. I mean, this guy is awfully tough, although he's kind of in the category of Edgar Martinez for this series. He's had problems, too.
Except for the 4-for-4 game at the Kingdome in Game 2, he hasn't hit well in the entire postseason. Strike one swinging.
Got a big wind blowing to right field tonight, and Manny Ramirez is very capable of going that way, and does go that way. Right center, and into center. And again, if Fazio stays away and gets something up on this guy, it could be trouble for him here in the opening inning.
That wind makes it feel much cooler than the game time temperature of 55 degrees. Here it is on 0-1. There's that delayed call by McClelland and the delayed reaction from the crowd. He keeps you in suspense.
He's a very tough guy to work as a play-by-play radio man. He's a very tough guy to work behind. Not only him, but there are a lot of umpires who give you that delayed call, Bob, and you kind of have to wait. You kind of have to go with their rhythm is what you have to do.
What about as a catcher in a situation where someone's running, maybe it's a 3-2 pitch, you don't know if it's a ball or a strike right away?
No, he'll holler right away.
Bouncing ball to third. Strange has to back up, looks for the force, and gets it. So they leave the bases loaded and settle for one. And we're back after this. Back at Jacobs Field, the wind definitely playing a part in this game early. Let's go downstairs to Jim Gray. Jimmy?
All right, Bob. Well, when Buhner and Diaz came back into the dugout, they were talking to each other and Ken Griffey Jr. And they both told Jr. that the ball is taking a dive, that there's a downdraft wind, and that they thought they were going to be able to catch both of their balls out there in the field. However, quickly right there at the end, as they made their dive and attempt, the ball took a shot down. Bob?
Jim, thanks a lot. And the conversation continues. Tino Martinez will be the leadoff man. And he has that same feeling Jay Buhner had late in Game 3 after making an error that led to an unearned run. And thinking about atoning.
Just to finish up that story on the umpire, Bob, and his delayed call. As the catcher, he gives you the strike call immediately. But they all have their own style. That's a style thing, I guess, where they wait a little while, a couple of seconds, and then pump that right arm out. But they immediately do say strike in case there is a guy running or whatever.
Hershiser given a run to work with. 2-1 to Martinez. Opposite field, backing up Albert Bell. So Tino Martinez is now 2 for 16 in the series. We have an NBC comedy doubleheader coming your way tonight after the game. One of NBC's new comedy hits, The Single Guy, followed by News Radio, which is a very good show with the former Saturday Night Live star Phil Hartman. 2 must-see comedy hits right here on NBC tonight after the game. Viewers on the West Coast, as always, check your local listings. An early indication was that Albert Bell had no apparent difficulty chasing after that ball hit by Tino Martinez.
Slicing liner that was heading toward the line, but Bell got there in plenty of time to make the catch.
Doug Strange is the hitter.
You know, when Piniella talked tonight about this lineup change with Strange and Diaz at left and Strange playing at third, you'd think he may have really opened himself to some criticism, taking a guy like Flowers out of the game, who had 23 home runs and drove in 96 runs this year. Coleman in left just hasn't been hitting the ball in the series, so he's got Diaz out there. And again, you wonder if Coleman may have been able to make the catch on that line drive that Diaz dropped with better speed.
Strange had 155 regular season at-bats. He's a switch hitter, but almost all of the at-bats were left-handed. 0 for 2 as a pinch hitter in this series. Struck him out. First K put in the scorebook by Hershiser.
Just what he does. There's that sinking fastball, and the Strange comes up empty. There it is. Tad behind. Hershiser's first K in tonight's game. It's tough on a hitter, too, especially if you come into a game you haven't played, and you're in there tonight on a night when it's cold and windy, and you're going up against this guy who's no easy piece of work anyway. Both for him and Diaz, talking about strength.
With his team trailing 7-0, last night Lou Piniella in the late stages got some people into the game, he said, basically just to acclimate them to the cold weather here. He pointed out that they spent the last series of the season in Texas. They had a long homestand toward the end of September in the Dome, and the only time all season long that he could recall that they played in chilly conditions was an April series in Chicago, and he said it was still, even then, in the mid-50s at Comiskey Park, not terribly cold. Mid-50s tonight, but the wind makes it feel much chillier than that.
Well, both dugouts are loaded with heaters, and down behind both dugouts there are batting areas with batting tees where hitters can go down and loosen themselves up, and everything down there is very well heated.
Two out, nobody on. Top of the second. Indians leading 1-0. Bell with another chance in left. And this one gets over his head. You could see that coming. He didn't have that thing lined up. And Diaz has what I guess will be scored a double.
Absolutely.
He was playing shallow. And he really did not have a bead on that ball.
Ball hit very hard by Diaz. And Bell, as you said, Bob, I don't think he thought the ball was hit as hard as it was. Did not get back in time. And again, he may not be at full strength either running-wise. He missed last night's game after being drilled in the foot. And here you get another look at it from a different angle. He just never caught up to it. It's a double for Diaz, and there's Kenny Lofton backing up the play, but Lofton not needed as Bell retrieves. Again, he may be sore. He may be a little sore on the right foot yet, and that could be a problem for him. And as you said earlier, I mean, for this guy to take himself out of the lineup as he did last night, he had to be hurting.
Mike Hargrove recalls a game in 1991 where he had a home plate collision with Matt Noakes, broke his jaw, lost a couple of teeth right there at the plate. He's bleeding, and he wants to stay in the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, neither team has put on a fielding clinic in the first couple of innings. And now Soho with a chance to tie it up if he can come through. Hershiser. That'll do it. They leave a man at second. Cleveland leads it 1-0. Chris Bosio escaped the first, allowing only one run. Cleveland left the bases loaded. Let's flash back to a night when he was completely masterful. April 1993, early in his Seattle career. He walked the first two men he faced that night against Boston, then set down the next 27 in a row. And look who finished it for him with a typical brilliant play, barehanded. Omar Vizquel, then the Mariners shortstop, since traded to Cleveland. That Ernest Riles chopper over the mound, he throws him out. Now, in the very next start, Bosio, covering first, had a collision with Jeff Treadway, broke his collarbone. And Bosio, one of the toughest competitors, a no-excuses guy, will tell you in a candid moment, he has never been the same. He has never had the full range of motion since that time.
That's right. And we talked about him earlier, the fact that he's lost velocity on his fastball and he had to change his style a little bit. And again, he's one of those guys that's going to pitch corners off the corner, and more often than not pitches from behind, and it gets him in trouble.
Sorrento leads off in the Cleveland second. And a strike to him.
You know, if you can stay ahead of a hitter, Bob, with the opening pitch, I mean, you throw him a strike, then you can mess around a little bit. But again, to pitch away, ball one, ball two, and then have that guy sitting 2-0 or 3-1 all the time, it's hitter's advantage, and everybody knows that. I mean, we're not talking any secrets here.
Bosio's best year was for the Brewers in '92. He was 16-6, won 15 on another occasion, and had a 14 victory season too. Started this year with 5 consecutive victories, but from 5-0, he wound up at 10-8.
He's very capable. I mean, in watching Chris through his early career in Milwaukee, I mean, he was their man.
He'll take the ball.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't care what it is. I mean, he's had problems before physically, but he's not one of those guys that's going to shun the baseball, shun a start.
2-2 to Sorrento.
You know, again, you're watching two pitchers here, Bob, Hershiser and Bosio, who are similar in style, but Bosio doesn't have the velocity of a Hershiser.
Doesn't get the corner, full count. Struck him out. So down goes Sorrento, who has the lowest average in tonight's starting lineup at 235. The Indians had a team average of 291.
There you see Sorrento, he chased one out of the strike zone. Again, this should be a 0-0 game. It's 1-0 Cleveland on an unearned run in the opening inning, but Bosio's done all right here. Only allowed a couple of hits and a dejected Paul Sorrento. I asked him tonight, Bob, remember that play last night where he slid into second and jammed his ankle? I asked him tonight. I was walking in the Indians clubhouse, and I saw him coming down the hall, limping slightly. I said, "You all right? You going to play tonight?" He said, "Yeah, I'll be in there. I'm all right."
Sandy Alomar Jr. back in. This is a foul ball.
But he said on his slide in the second base last night, he hooked his cleat in the dirt. That's what did it. Turned his ankle a little bit and almost left last night's game. He said, "I almost came out last night, but I'm fine tonight."
Of all the Indians, with injury problems last night. Only Slider, the mascot, is on the disabled list. He fell off the bullpen wall and actually was on the field while the ball was in play. Boy, that's the most inspirational thing since win one for the Gipper. This ball club has rallied around the specter of Slider being absent. Alomar was inspired to get back in.
He's here tonight.
Albert Bell said, hey, if Slider can't make it, well, I will.
Yeah. He's here tonight. Saw him earlier.
The crowd went nuts when he came out, Slider, I mean, on crutches. Alomar, meanwhile, sat out last night with a stiff neck. He slept in an uncomfortable position. The Indians immediately sent a silly Posturepedic over to his home. He's okay for Game 5. Fazio has his sign from Wilson. The 2-1 pitch. Down and away. You know, I finally found something that the GM, the brilliant GM of the Indians, John Hart, did wrong. He didn't develop any depth at mascot. They have no backup mascot.
Backup Slider.
With Slider down, they're mascotless for the rest of the postseason. Drive into right center field. Ken Griffey Jr. will not get there, and it hops up into the crowd for a double. The wind was taking that away from Jr. It wound up as close to Jay Buhner, the right fielder, as to Griffey. When it left the bat, it looked like it was Jr.'s ball all the way.
Here it is again. You see Alomar hit that ball down around the trademark. I mean, he hit it on the fat part of the bat. We showed you how that wind was blowing earlier. It took that ball away from Griffey into the gap and into the seats out in right center. It's a nasty wind. It's a cold, raw wind, but really blowing 30, 35 miles an hour at times, gusting to right field.
Lofton, line hard to left, his first time up. He's 7 for 16 with a couple of stolen bases in the series. And even most of his outs have been hit hard.
Yeah, he's had a good series, Bob. He really has. And despite the fact that Randy Johnson opened Game 1 here, he was in the lineup and came up with two big base hits in a losing effort.
Here's a bullet. Cora's got it. And this will turn into a double play. So just like that, the bottom of the second is in the books, and it's still 1-0 Cleveland. This ball is just scorched by Kenny Lofton, but Alomar strays off second, and when Cora takes it on the fly, it's an easy DP.
Yeah, you're kind of trapped as a runner, Bob. I mean, you're just at your normal lead. Alomar only took a step and a half or so, and that ball was hit like a bullet right at Cora, backhanded play, and they get the easy double play.
Even if he heads back with that lead, it's going to be a double play, so you might as well break and hope the ball gets by.
Yeah, you don't have a chance. I mean, you're only having to take a couple of steps and you're gone anyway. And with your lead of 10 steps or 12 steps, they get the double play anyway. It's a tough chance for a runner. I mean, it's a backhanded stab by Cora anyway to make the initial out.
As we move to the third, here's Wilson hitless in the series. Hershiser misses outside.
Wilson yesterday with a throwing error on a steal attempt by Lofton in the opening inning that led to a run. I like this kid. I really do. He's a good receiver, and more often than not, a pretty good thrower. And has had a tough series thus far.
Hit .278 in the regular year with some pop. 9 home runs. Fouled off 1 and 2. How good has Orel Hershiser been in the postseason? Only one other pitcher ever had a record of 6-0 in postseason play. That was Lefty Gomez for the Yankee dynasty during the Joe DiMaggio, Lou Gehrig era. That's all World Series play. Red Ruffing had a 6-game winning streak for the Yankees. Dave Stewart. There's a called strike 3. And Wilson sits down to start the third. Dave Stewart for the Oakland A's also had a 6-game winning streak in the LCS and in the World Series, but they had losses before that. Only Gomez and Hershiser reached 6-0. Here's Joey Cora with the bat in his hands, but talking now about his glove work. We spoke with him a couple of days ago. Joey Cora.
I'm not afraid to make the play. I go out there, and if I have to die for a ball, I die. If I'm going to try to make the play. I'm not going to hold back because I'm going to make, going to make an error or whatever.
Explaining why he made 23 errors this year, a high error total, but he makes up for that with a lot of spectacular plays that snuff rallies out.
You know, a lot of his errors, or not a lot, but some of his errors came on throws, on relatively easy chances and then bad throws, Bob.
Here's a huge play he made with the bases loaded in the first inning to bail Bob Walcott out on the ball off Jim Thome's bat. Now it's Kenny Lofton who's robbed by Cora. And now back live, the 2-0 pitch from Hershiser. You saw the graphic, 22 errors at second base. He also made one more at another position for a season total of 23.
He's done a good job for Seattle, and he's a guy with some speed who can steal bases for you.
In the leadoff spot tonight, with the slumping Vince Coleman benched at least for a game. The 3-1. Doesn't happen often. Hershiser now with his second walk of the game. That's about a full game's quota for him.
The pitch that I thought Cora might offer at. It was close. McClellan saw it as ball 4, but I thought the pitch was awfully close. Too close to take for a guy like Cora. This looks like a pretty good fastball to me. Oh, I'm going to tell you. I can't believe Cora didn't swing at the pitch, and I again, thought it was a strike. Those are the kind, as a catcher, you turn around to an umpire and ask what was wrong with that one. I guarantee you that's the same pitch. Around the same area. You know, Edgar Martinez has had a tough time. He's labored through this whole series. They have worked him away, basically, and then all of a sudden he starts looking outside. They come inside, jam him inside with hard stuff.
Well, let's take a look at the way they have worked him.
Well, here you see what they've done with Martinez. Up and away only one time. Inside and above the waist. They try to jam him in there, try to get him to chase. 18 times. Outside and down, away. 6 times down and in. Outside, below the waist. Those are breaking balls and sometimes sinkers that they try to backdoor him on the outside corner. And this guy, talking about Hershiser against him, Bob, is probably the guy who can do it the best.
With Sorrento holding Cora at first, there is a huge gap on the right side of the infield for Edgar Martinez. 2-1.
And Martinez's first time up, I mean, he hit a ball hard to left center that Lofton made a nice play on. Martinez hitting in the second spot for the first time this year. Did it last year, but not so this season. First time tonight.
The runner goes on 2-1, and it's fouled off. Hitting out of that cleanup spot, Martinez batted .356 with 29 homers, 113 RBIs, an on-base percentage of .479 as we throw in 116 walks. A season that in most years would have gotten him the MVP award. But this year he's got to contend not just with Mo Vaughn in Boston, but with Albert Bell here in Cleveland. Cora diving back.
In talking about Martinez tonight and why they elevated him up there, they said it may change the pitch selection for Hershiser. I don't think so. It may for another pitcher, but this guy, no matter where you hit, what you're hitting, whatever, he's going to stay basically with what he does best.
Trying to go the opposite way down the line, and this is a foul ball.
That's what Martinez has to do, Bob. That's what Lee Elia talked about tonight. They spent extra time in the cages. Nobody hit outside tonight. The field was covered because it rained earlier. All the hitting took place inside. And Elia had a long, long session with Martinez, not only physically hitting, but looking at film. And, I mean, that's this guy's strong suit. I mean, this is the way he's got to hit. And if you do come inside to him, he can, you know, he sits long enough on outside stuff that if you get him inside, try to get inside, he'll turn. I mean, try to hit you hard to left.
Very nearly an extra base hit that probably would have scored Cora from first. Down and away, full count.
Nice play by Alomar on a pitch in the dirt. A little breaking ball that time. This is a nice play by Sandy Alomar. Here you see the breaking ball by Hershiser, and Alomar shifting out, shifting his whole body instead of trying to backhand that ball like a lot of catchers do sometimes. He shifted his body out and made a nice play on it.
Cora takes off, swing and a miss. Alomar juggles it. Martinez fans, but Cora steals second. Third strikeout for Hershiser.
And as I said just a moment ago, you're not going to change Hershiser's pitch selection. I don't care where they stick you in the lineup. If he knows he's getting you out a certain way, or you're scuffling, you're having a tough time, he's going to stay with what they've done with you throughout the series. And there again, he comes down low and outside with a breaking ball, and Cora winds up with a steal only because Alomar bobbled the ball.
Did you see the look of disgust and dismay on Edgar Martinez's face as he turned away?
Well, I think anytime you're the kind of a hitter that Martinez is, Bob, I mean, it is frustrating to you. You get pitches to hit and you don't hit them, or they slice foul on you.
Outside to Griffey.
But in the case of a Martinez, it happens for you very quick. Like, I mean, you're sailing along, you're hitting the ball, everything's going well. All of a sudden, the next game, bang, you're into this slump. You may stay in it 4 or 5 games, which in this case may be too late for Seattle. He's got to get out of it. I mean, he's the guy that has carried this club many, many times.
Line drive left side in there for a base hit that will tie the game. Griffey's going to have a double. Bell chasing it down. Cora comes home to score. The ball got stuck in the tarp down there. So Dale Ford says, slow up, Junior. This one stops at second base.
Can you imagine Bell down there trying to retrieve that thing, lifting that tarp by himself
with one hand,
lifting the tarp and then picking the ball out of there? There's a slicing liner off the bat of Griffey, and see that ball roll right up inside the tarp, and Dale Ford right on it. Ground rule double.
So that ties it up at 1. The steal by Cora, huge in this inning.
Well, Alomar fouled the ball, too, Bob.
Yeah.
He didn't take a shot at him.
Because although the umpire has it within his discretion to say he thinks the guy might have scored from first base, almost always they'll just make it a 2-base advance on a play like that. So he would have wound up at third. It would have been second and third. But the steal sets up the run. 0-2.
Well, this guy just does not change. I mean, he has gone with the off-speed stuff. Breaking ball, the slider, splitter once in a while. He got Buhner in the opening inning on a soft fly to right. Threw upstairs on him twice with good fastballs. And here, breaking ball style, he's got him on 2.
And strikes him out. He struck out the side, but there's a run mixed in. With the game tied at 1, the Indians will send up Vizquel, Baerga, and Bell in the last half of the third. Omar reached on a Tino Martinez error in the first and scored. Fazio back even, despite the fact that the Indians have hit some shots against him in their first couple of turns at bat. Third baseman in close. Vizquel tries to bunt anyway.
Well, Fazio ought to be leading this game 1-0 after the unearned run in the opening inning on the air. That led to the Indians' run to put them on top 1-0 when Vizquel reached. A little bouncer hit to Tino Martinez. It ought to be a 1-0 game, Seattle.
A ball and a strike.
Here's the guy, of course, you want to keep off. Again, we talked earlier about Lofton in the leadoff spot. Here's another guy who can run with 29 steals during the regular season. Hitting in front of Baerga, Bell, and Murray.
Cora takes care of Vizquel, which brings us to tonight's Lexus Diamond Dust baseball fact. 1966, the Astrodome hosted the first regular season game ever played on artificial turf. Now, before you say, wait a minute, the Dome opened in 65, that's true, but they tried to grow real grass.
That's right, I was there. I
at the Astrodome, and it did not work, and they went to the artificial turf in 66. At which ballpark was the first postseason game played on the synthetic stuff?
Do you know?
I got a pretty good idea, but I don't want to hazard a guess here and spoil everybody's fun.
No.
It's not right away.
Well, I will then.
All right, go ahead.
No, I'm Busch Stadium.
I'm trying to remember when they put artificial turf in at Busch Stadium. It wasn't right away when they moved in 66. And, of course, the 67 and 68 World Series were played there. If it wasn't St. Louis, it had to be either Three Rivers or Riverfront. Pirates and Reds with the good teams in the early 70s.
Remember Comiskey Park had that artificial infield? The only portion of the field that did not have natural grass was the infield. I don't know why they did that. It was ugly and tough to play on besides.
Fazio works 1-on-1 to Baerga. And remember when Bill Veeck had his players wearing shorts for the second game of Sunday doubleheaders? Those black uniforms and the shorts?
Yeah. And after the game when they left the park, too.
Well, you know, in the summer months, when you go picnicking, makes for very snappy garb. Fazio has it. Nice play, 2 out. And the luxury, if one can call it that, of working to Albert Bell with the bases empty.
What was the minor league club, Bob, that wore the shorts? Hollywood Stars, I guess. Long time ago.
Pacific Coast League.
Yeah.
Albert Bell has gone 9 official at-bats since homering off Bob Wolcott in Game 1 at the Kingdome. Get this. This is how hot he was to close the season. He hasn't gone 10 at-bats without a homer since September 11th. He hit 31 of his 50 in August and September.
Now, we said the same thing about Edgar Martinez. Had only gone 8 at-bats as far as an offer goes during the regular season. Comes into postseason play and really labors, as has Albert Bell so far.
Whether it's the ankle tonight or not, even in some of the previous games, Albert was not getting the kinds of swings we've seen him have over the last several weeks. This is in the seats.
Well, if you stay down and away on Bell, that's the way everybody tries to pitch this guy, Bob. I mean, if you can stay down and away, breaking stuff, and then, you know, show him a fastball inside, but tight. I mean, make it off the corner, make it off the inside. I'm not talking about something that he can whack in there, bail out and whack. I'm talking about something that's either going to move him back or he's going to chase. But basically, to try and stay low and away on this guy and try to get him to chase, as Fazio did his first time up.
Chris is ahead of him 0-2. Got him looking. They go 1-2-3 in the third, and we're back after this from your local station. Cold night, but Orel Hershiser needs to cool off here.
Remember earlier we were talking about the two guys who would be most comfortable on a night like this would be the pitcher and the catcher. I'm sure that was not ice water. It was probably a bottle of warm water. But he's sweating. He's perspiring. And it's cool here tonight. I'm sure now around the 50-degree mark or maybe into the high 40s. What is our temperature anyway tonight?
Tino Martinez, followed by Strange and Diaz. Hershiser quickly ahead of him, 0-2. Jose Mesa protecting himself against the elements. Well, he could be. Could very well be facing us. Provided he had a special reversible jacket. Making quick work of Martinez for strikeout number 5. This 1995 League Championship Series game is brought to you by Bud Light. If you want great taste that won't fill you up and never lets you down, make it a Bud Light. Hager's Stuff You Can Wear. And MGM's new comedy, Get Shorty, which I personally find to be a threatening statement. Strange fouls one off.
Why is that?
No, forget about it.
You don't want to talk about it anymore?
I tower over the movie star Danny DeVito.
Do you?
Got him by half a foot.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, come on.
Wow.
Come on.
I don't know that.
Strange struck out his first time.
Happy for you.
It's that kind of compassion and concern that endears me to you, or you to me. Here's a bunt foul. You know, earlier, talking about Hershiser being 6-0 in postseason play. That, of course, the perfect record, and we mentioned Lefty Gomez. Bob Gibson had a 7-game winning streak in between his 2 postseason losses. This is all World Series play for Gibson. He lost his first game against the Yankees in '64, then won 2. Beat the Red Sox 3 times in '67, the Tigers twice in '68. Goodbye. Number 6 for Hershiser. He struck out the side in the last inning and the first 2 here. And then Gibby, as you remember, lost the heartbreaker in Game 7 to Mickey Lolich and the Tigers in 1968. But he had a 7-game World Series winning streak along the way. At which ballpark was the first postseason game played on artificial turf? As we give you the answer to Lexus Diamond Dust Quiz.
I said Busch Stadium. What is it?
It is Three Rivers Stadium in Pittsburgh. Game 1 of the 1970 National League Championship Series.
All right.
Diaz doubled his first time up. We're in the 4th, game tied at 1. And Hershiser a pitch away from striking out the side for the 2nd consecutive inning.
Now they got Tino Martinez on an off-speed, a breaking ball. Then I think he struck out Strange on a changeup. It looked like a change of pace anyway.
Roaring in anticipation at Jacobs Field. And Diaz hangs in there. Although he struck out the side in the 3rd, Hershiser yielded a run. With 1 out, he walked Cora. Cora stole second as Edgar Martinez struck out for the 2nd out of the inning. And then Ken Griffey Jr. delivered an opposite field double to tie the game.
Alex Diaz is a guy that's done a great job for Seattle this year. Kid that started in the Milwaukee organization, had no place for him. Winds up in Seattle with a chance to go to the World Series.
A liner to center for a hit. So this has worked out well for Lou Piniella. He yanks Coleman. Diaz moves in left field, and he's got a double and a single.
Well, Strange has been up twice, struck out twice, but Diaz, as you said, Bob, a double, and now a line single to center. This guy has excellent speed. He's got a great throwing arm. And a pretty adequate outfielder. I mean, he did a great job when Griffey was down, along with Rich Amaral in center. And, I mean, as I said before, boy, how fortunes change. I mean, here's a guy that, you know, if you stay in one organization, you haven't seen postseason play. You may not see postseason play for a long time. And here he winds up in Seattle. He went back to the minor leagues, winds up with the Mariners again, and a chance to go to the World Series.
Soho slices one foul.
You know, we talked about this guy last night, Luis Soho, and his style of hitting, Bob. I mean, the way he goes into the bucket, that front foot flies out towards 3rd. But still, I mean, even if you pitch him away, and it has to be really bad away before he can't get a bat on the ball. I mean, he's one of those guys that goes up there ripping anything that's close.
0-2. And if you've been with us earlier in this series, you know the fans in Cleveland have picked up on the style of the Mariner fans. It first came into vogue with Randy Johnson on the hill, roaring in anticipation of the strikeout anytime Johnson got 2 strikes on the hitter. Then they started to do it with all the other Mariner pitchers. And now the opposition is doing it when the scene shifts from the Kingdome to Jacobs Field.
It may be a little too cold here tonight because a lot of them in the upper deck are staying seated. They may be bent in that position. Not so much it's cold, it's windy, it's raw. Still 55 degrees, and I didn't think it was going to be that warm tonight. I really didn't. They told us last night 37 degrees.
0-2 pitch in the air, right field, Ramirez. No runs, a hit, a man left. To the bottom of the fourth, tied at 1. Talk about a perfectionist. Hershiser annoyed at himself. He had 2 strikes on Diaz and allowed a hard single to center field. He was 1 pitch away from striking out the side in order. That was the only blemish in the 4th inning, but it displeased him.
Well, you talked about him earlier, his tenacity, Bob, and the way he studies hitters. And he is. He's upset at the fact that he got one up on Diaz and he rifled that single in the center.
Talking it over with Bud Black, the former Indian and Royal left-hander. Part of that World Championship team in Kansas City in '85, as I recall, with Brett, Saberhagen, McRae, and the rest. Eddie Murray, RBI single his first time up, rifles one into left for a hit. Moving over is Diaz. He has lots of time. The 39-year-old Murray is not thinking about a double. And he's aboard to start the 4th.
Eddie Murray with his second base hit. He knocked in a run in the opening inning, and here are lines of Bosio offering in the left center for a base hit to lead it off. We talked earlier about Diaz and his ability to throw, and there's no way that Murray was going to take an extra base on him.
Significant year for Eddie Murray, a return to postseason. He'd been there in '79 and '83 as a young player with the Orioles. Reaches 3,000 hits, and another plateau is within reach. If he can have one more year like this one, he's 21 homers from 500. Tommy walked his first time up. Tino Martinez not holding Eddie Murray at first base. At least he wasn't on that first pitch.
Well, he's going to play right behind him as Bosio goes to his stretch and then drop back. Feeling that Murray is not a threat to run, is not going to run. Martinez will play right behind him, try to keep him closer. I mean, Bosio's still going to have a shot at Murray in case he does want to go over there. There you see Martinez, and he'll drop back on the pitch.
Obviously, they don't want to give Tommy the big hole on the right side, and they figured not only will Murray not be going, but he won't be able, even with a more sizable lead, to get down to second base in time to disrupt the potential double play.
Well, the other thing, the tough thing for a guy like Martinez, when you're off the bag the way he is now, Bob, and you start moving on the pitch, in case Tommy does get one inside and rip it down the line, you're going to have a tough time getting back on it.
2-1. We're in the bottom of the 4th. And that was Mariners, Hargroves, Indians. Tied at 1 in this game, tied at 2 in the series. And like a quarterback on a chilly day, Buhner tucks the meat hand into the shirt. Or perhaps he has a Napoleonic complex of some kind. Murray has to scamper back. Martinez trying to fool him.
That's what I was talking about. The first baseman playing behind a runner like that, no matter if it's Murray or not, you play behind a runner, you still leave that thought in the back of his mind that you will break to the bag after you've gone a couple of times away from the line to play the hitter. You let the pitcher know that you are coming back to take a throw, and he made it pretty close on Murray that time.
One pitch. High in the air to center. Junior's there. That's the first out on the 4th. One more time through all the football scores today. Tip of the cap to Greg Gumbel. I'm watching the pregame show. He made it back after working game 4 last night.
Yep.
Not shirking his duties. Either taking the late flight out last night or the early flight back into New York from Atlanta this morning. He made it back to work a full day of football. And there are all the results with some details beneath. Up steps Ramirez, who hit into a force play his first time. Now Martinez holding Murray in more standard fashion.
You know, despite the fact that Bosio has given up a couple of balls that have been hit rather hard, the Indians still have only 4 against him. Hershiser's given up 3 in a game that's tied. I mean, they're both working hard, pitching very similar here tonight, trying to stay out of the power zones on the bigger hitters. You know, as you watch Hershiser work, Bob, and we talked earlier about his slider down and away from a guy like a Martinez, somebody that can hurt you to try to get him to chase. Fazio works this guy the same way. I mean, down, low, and away on Ramirez. Anything up and anything out over the plate, he's going to drive and hit hard on you. And Chris staying right down and away on him. Might see him come low and inside once in a while with a little splitter, or up and in. If you get him leaning out, you got to move him back, chase him off.
0-2 pitch. Breaking ball hit hard at shortstop. Soho gets the force. Do they turn it? Yeah, Martinez stayed on the bag with a nice stretch. 5-4-3 double play ends the 4th.
Welcome back to Cleveland. I'm Jim Gray. I'm joined by the Piniella family, and it's a hostile crowd that they are now in. Derek, your dad came out of the dugout a couple of times during the game. What did he say to you?
He just wanted to make sure that we were warm enough with the weather going on. He wanted to make sure, if we need a jacket, that he could give us something. So just, making sure we were okay.
How often, Lou Jr., do you second-guess your dad when you get home at the dinner table?
Not very often. The Cleveland fans have poked some fun at Jets, but everyone's been really pleasant so far overall.
How about this crowd? Are they a little hostile to the family out here?
They're enthusiastic, theatrical, not very hostile, very friendly.
All right, guys, enjoy the game. Bob?
All right, Jim, thanks a lot. And despite my best efforts to rewrite the scoring rules of baseball, the shortstop is still 6. So that inning-ending double play hit into by Ramirez goes 6-4-3.
Was Jim Gray wearing batting gloves?
Yeah, Hannah Storm, who has come up to the booth, is nodding yes. I guess he didn't bring his own gloves. Vince Coleman, not in the lineup, kind enough to lend Jimmy some batting gloves. And they blend so nicely with the trench coat.
Brown, yeah.
Excellent fashion statement.
Really tries to get rid of that microphone with all that pine tar on those gloves.
Wilson steps up, cuts and misses, a ball and a strike.
Can't you see him walking through the lobby of the hotel with that microphone hanging off his hand? Hi, how you doing? Oh, sorry.
Unable to release it.
Hannah Storm up here, Bob, and talking about the weather down on the field, telling us it's a lot colder.
Vizquel. A little bit of trouble getting rid of it, but enough time to take care of Wilson.
A lot colder on the field than it is up here anyway. Of course, we're inside in the booth with the windows open, but here's a bullet. This is not an easy chance. This ball is a tough chance for Vizquel. There's that little in-between hop, Bob. That's not a short hop. That's an in-between job, and that guy made it look easy. Little problem with it, but it's still a tough chance. Here it is again. Watch. This is an in-between hop. That's a tough hop. That ball was hit hard, and a tough hop for him, and he made the play.
A ball outside to Cora. He walked and scored on Griffey's double in the 3rd. Prior to that, he had grounded out. Over Hershiser. Baerga backhands and makes no play. Thought about the whirling throw. Realized with the speeding Cora, he'd only be risking a throwing error. So an infield hit.
The only chance Baerga has on this ball, any chance at all, is a flip to Vizquel coming across. And Vizquel playing behind him. They had no chance. And as you said, Bob, the speedy Joey Cora reached in the 3rd, stole a base after he walked and scored the only run tonight. He's aboard again.
Edgar Martinez lined out, struck out swinging. Unbelievably, 1 for 17 in the series. After hitting nearly 600 against the Yankees, after hitting .356 for the regular season. He became the first right-handed hitter to win 2 American League batting titles. This is kind of remarkable. Since Luke Appling of the White Sox in 1936, and then again in 43.
You know, in watching Martinez in his first time up tonight, he lined the bullet to center, went back to the dugout, made good contact, smiles, laughing. Everybody says, all right. He finally started to hit the ball. Next time up, Hershiser strikes him out, on a bad breaking ball down low, and he's right back in the same syndrome.
Cora stole a base in the third.
Joey Cora, you think it's not cold down there? Raw and windy.
Native of
dropping, yep.
Native of Puerto Rico, plays his home games in a dome stadium. He's played in cold weather before. He was with the White Sox for a while, with them in the division-winning season of 1993, but still, this is not the sort of weather he generally has performed in. He's running on this pitch, and Martinez fouls it off.
When you have a guy like Martinez, or any hitter for that matter, I mean, you're going bad, and you're out in front of pitches, and you're swinging at bad balls. It's a good thing and a nice thing for a hitter to have a guy running in front of you, Bob, because you wait back a little bit longer to try and take a ball to right field. You get the longest look that you possibly can at a ball to try and drive it behind the runner as he's moving.
Hershiser, who has struck out 6, ahead of Martinez 1 and 2. Cora not going. He strikes him out again if Alomar held it, which he did not.
And again, he's staying right with breaking stuff on Martinez. I'm a little surprised that once in a while he doesn't come down low and inside and try to back him off. Here it is again, a low breaking ball, and Martinez just got a piece of it. Bouncing off the shin guard of Tim McClellan, as you see Cora thinking that the ball may have been missed by Alomar, but it was a foul tip. See if Hershiser goes down and in here. I mean, Martinez trying to poke the ball, now trying to take the ball to right field all the time. And they're playing him that way in the outfield. Shifted around slightly towards right. Nothing real major.
Top of the 5th inning, Game 5, series tied at 2. And this game tied at 1 apiece. With 1 out, Cora at first. 1 and 2 to Martinez, Griffey on deck.
Now down around home plate. Martinez backing out. Paper and debris flying around down there, and he backed out.
Now the 1-2. Got him. Went down and away.
Well, he stayed right with the breaking ball and picks up another strikeout. Alomar looked like he wanted a fastball. Hershiser shook him off. As I said before, if you're successful with one type of pitch and staying in the same area, why not? Why change? Why change?
The Indians held Vaughn and Canseco in the division series to a combined 0 for 27. They've got Edgar and Tino Martinez now, who generally bat 4 and 5. It's been changed tonight. But combined, they are 3 for 35.
He's just going to make you. He's going to make you as a hitter go the other way. He did with Griffey back in the third when Junior knocked in the run with a double to left, but he made him go the other way. Didn't give him anything that he could pull and drive hard to right.
The 0-1 pitch in the air to left. Albert Bell in and toward the line. The wind makes it an adventure, and Albert drops the ball. Here comes Cora. He's going to score. A collision with Alomar. Griffey on his way to second. Run puts Hershiser behind. The first time Hershiser has trailed in this postseason.
Well, a ball that should have been caught by Albert Bell. The wind blowing hard, as we said earlier, gusting to 25-30 miles per hour. This is a routine fly ball. Little low fastball that Griffey pops up in the short left. Bell coming on, and the wind pushing that ball towards right. More towards center. He reached up with one hand, tried to make the catch, and dropped it. There's Cora, head first into the shin guards of Alomar. Not the smartest thing to do. Griffey winds up at second on a costly error. I'll tell you what, as a runner, I don't recommend head first sliding into a catcher. Bat on your face and head.
Buhner. taking strike one. Another look. Now watch Cora. With 2 outs, he runs hard, even though it looks like a routine play. And now when he sees the ball has been dropped, he kicks it into another gear and scores. And is discussing the perils of that collision.
Yep.
Man, oh man.
I'll tell you what, that's, again, if you're coming in at home plate and there's going to be a play on you, if you're not going to try to knock a guy down and knock the ball away from him, you got to come in feet first. I mean, that shin guard is hard, hurts. There's a lot of different things to your face, no matter if you're wearing a helmet or not.
Albert Bell wears that perpetual scowl. Hard to tell if he's any angrier, but he can't be pleased. Buhner strikes out. 8 strikeouts for Hershiser, but an unearned run puts him down 2-1.
Here's Albert Bell on that fly ball hit by Griffey. He had his eyes on the ball, now takes his eyes off the ball to check the runner for whatever reason. I mean, it's going to be the 3rd out of the inning. All he's got to do is catch the ball. He bobbles it off of his glove. Orel Hershiser, lazy fly ball. You make a good pitch on Griffey. You get him on a fly to left. Oh, not so. Not so. Heading toward the dugout was Hershiser, and Cora runs right by him for the lead run. And here's Albert Bell. And not very happy. And why would he be?
He picks up 2 errors on the play as the throw got away, and that allowed Griffey to move up. Sorrento leads off in the bottom of the 5th. Suddenly, Bosio is in front of Hershiser, 2-1. Maybe Bell was taking a peek to see where Vizquel was, the possibility of a collision. Maybe he was checking the runner or both, but you plainly saw he took his eyes off it, then tried to refocus, dropped the ball.
Did you see Cora busting around second, Bob? Yep. And then when he saw Bell drop that ball, I mean, he really tore out for 3rd and home. But he never stopped. I mean, many times you see the runner or a hitter on a fly ball or a routine ground ball, ease up, pull up. And if he had on that play, he may not have scored, but he was busting all the way and he scored. 2-1.
Sorrento hits one softly in the shallow center field. Ken Griffey Jr. comes in. As you said, it's tough enough to give up an unearned run, but when you think you've gotten out of the inning by making a good pitch to Ken Griffey, and then you get burned, it's all the more galling.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, he's trying to stay away on guys who can take him deep, right or left field. And he makes a good pitch on Griffey, a low sinker that Kenny got under, and it's the lazy fly ball. And you figure the inning is over, and it continued. And you end up on the short end.
Alomar doubled to right center his first time up, hit a career-high 300 this year, and did it in large part through clenched teeth. He had an injury-plagued season. Knee surgery in April, came back sooner than expected. In the past, he's had back woes, injured rotator cuff. And here's a new one. He has twice torn the webbing between the middle and ring fingers of his throwing hand.
Foul tips?
I didn't ask. It sounds kind of gruesome. You know, I should have.
I think you should have.
I will check this out.
I'll check it out myself.
All right, fine. You can't trust me, that's for sure. It sounded gruesome enough to begin with. I didn't want to inquire any further.
Oh, it's not that bad.
I don't know, maybe it was a kitchen accident. What do I know?
Could be, you're right. Can opener?
Using the Ronco Havamade, and the thing blew up on him. I do not know. Bosio's 1-1 pitch to him. Slow ground ball. Strange coming in. Throws on the run. Got it.
Electric razor? A lot of ways.
Well, we have a few innings left. Why not list them?
Here's that last play. Good charge by Strange. Little short hop pickup. And he throws out Alomar easily. We have to find out, because I'm not sure. I want to know.
This has now become some sort of bizarre obsession.
It's a catcher
for you.
It's a catcher. I figure it's got to be a foul tip. We got to find out.
Boy, am I glad I brought this up. Here's Lofton.
Meet some of the other stuff you brought up.
He's hit the ball hard twice. Line to left, and then lined into a double play when Cora made a backhanded stab and caught Alomar off second base. Cora to his right. Stumbles, throws, safe. Almost anybody else, and he's got him. But not Lofton. Piniella popping out to argue.
Boy, what a play by Joey Cora. On a ball hit near second. Piniella out there arguing with Drew Cole. I think he made a good call. A heck of a play by Cora. He makes the backhanded diving stab. Had he been able to get up a little bit quicker or a different batter and runner, as you said, Bob, he makes the play. He just can't get himself turned around in time to make the play on Lofton, who I think beat the throw. Very close play. But what a play by Cora. Wow. What a play. Well, on another angle, Lou Piniella may have had a gripe.
And with 2 out, the league's leading base stealer is aboard.
And despite the fact that the Indians are down 2-1, don't be surprised at all if you see Lofton run. Boy, what a play by Cora. Wow.
The Indians trail 2-1 last half of the fifth. Swing and a miss. If Bosio can protect the lead through this fifth inning, he'd be looking at the heart of the order, Baerga, Bell, and Murray in the sixth. If he got that far through 6, Piniella would be thrilled to go to his bullpen at that point.
Absolutely, Bob. He's pitched a good ball game here tonight. The base hit by Lofton, only the 5th in the game, as has Hershiser. I mean, they've both pitched well. A couple of unearned runs for both.
Pitch out, not going.
Well, Wilson thinking that Lofton might run. And Bosio, one of those guys that can throw strikes. I mean, if he really has to throw strikes, you're not embarrassed to put a hitter ahead in the count to Chris with a pitch out. And not a bad idea with Lofton aboard. And probably called by Lou Piniella or one of his coaches.
He's not going. And it's ball 3. 3-1. Vizquel reached on an error and scored in the first. Grounded out in the third. 1 for 17 in the series. Piniella told us before the game, there's a pretty good chance Bob Walcott, who surprised everybody in Game 1, will get another start before this is over. Belcher's a possibility. Dennis apparently is not. We'll see Randy Johnson, obviously, once more. If they lose tonight, we'll see him Tuesday in Game 6. If they win tonight and need him in Game 7, right, and can't win Game 6 without him, then he would go in the 7th game. The big unit.
Johnson to your left. Dennis to your right.
Lofton bluffs the go, and Vizquel draws a walk. Big spot for Baerga.
Second walk given up by Bosio tonight. He walked Jim Thome back in the opening inning when the Indians took the 1-0 lead. What's the tying run at second now? With Baerga coming up. And that's the phone to the bullpen. And there's some stirring out in the right field corner. That's Bobby Cuellar, Seattle pitching coach. Now, Bob, you mentioned a moment ago Tim Belcher. That's him now.
This pretty much makes it a lock.
Yep.
About Walcott. And a ball to Baerga.
Well, no sooner do you start talking about Fazio and how happy Piniella is with getting 5 solid innings out of Chris, and he's having trouble here. There's 2 outs in the 5th behind on Baerga now with a ball and no strikes.
Oh, McClellan, you know, if you're not on the right end of the call, that annoys you just a bit.
Yeah, you're right. There's right-hander Jeff Nelson up along with Tim Belcher.
Fazio trying to wriggle out of it here in the last of the 5th. The trouble began on a close call at first. Lofton safe by a paper-thin margin. Infield hit with 2 out. Vizquel follows with a walk. One and 2 to Baerga.
Now Dan Wilson out for a couple of quick words with Chris Fazio. Will be joined, I should say, by the shortstop, Luis Sojo. And again, Fazio just doesn't want to give India. This is a big secret here. When they put their glove up in front of their mouth, that's a secret, buddy. Either that or maybe a cert or 2.
Yeah. I figured I'd let you say it.
Come on. He's a friend. Who worries about that? It's only a game. It's better than having somebody tell you about it, isn't it?
I guess so.
Well, to each his own.
I'm in no position to dispute any of these assertions.
No.
Or
Because I played the game.
Good point. Although not particularly well, I might add. Which turned into your real career. Here's the 1-2 with the runners going. And on ball 2, a double steal. The Mariners taken completely by surprise there.
Well, whatever it was Wilson and Fazio were talking about, along with Sojo, it did not involve an attempted steal. But Lofton and Vizquel both move up 90 feet. And a base hit here now. Good flick. The Indians back on top.
Jacobs Field really alive now. The 2-2 pitch. Fazio has the comebacker. They'll strand 2. And through 5, Fazio leads the previously invincible Hershiser 2-1. On to the 6th at Jacobs Field. Bob Costas and Bob Uecker, game 5 of this series. The Mariners, as we mentioned, were 22 games off the pace set in the American League by the Cleveland Indians. And it's a valid comparison because both leagues play a balanced schedule these days, so you're not playing any more games in your own division than outside. But the way they closed the season made this predictable, really, that it would be a tough series. You had to favor the Indians, but there was no way they were just going to walk all over the Mariners. Not the way the Mariners concluded the season.
Nope. And you can't tell that to any of the Seattle people as far as their matchups go against the Indians. Both clubs very productive offensively. Both with good pitching. Norm Charlton, a great closer. Been super.
Tino Martinez with an opposite field single on the first pitch by Hershiser in the 6th. Cleveland's winning percentage during the regular season was .694. Seattle's was .545. That's a difference of 149 percentage points. The reason I mention that, there have been 150 postseason series played in the major leagues since the inception of the World Series in 1903. Among those 150 series, there has never been a larger difference between the regular season winning percentage of the opposing teams than in this series. All of which will mean absolutely nothing to the Indians unless they can win 2 of the next 3.
Absolutely. Means nothing to Seattle either.
But an item of interest to our viewing audience here. Strange looking to bunt.
That was a strange looking bunt, too.
Thome creeping in. Wants to lay one down again and gets it down. Hershiser has it. No play at second. Successful sacrifice.
Good sacrifice by Doug Strange. Pushing this ball up along the right side. And Hershiser, with his momentum carrying him toward the bag, he had no chance. No chance for any kind of a play on Tino Martinez at second. And with Baerga covering, they get to hitter Strange, and another run in scoring position would be the 3rd for Seattle out at second.
And Diaz, starting tonight in left field, has doubled and singled. Tap foul.
Hershiser got out in front of him back in the 4th inning. Left-hander is Jim Poole, the right-hander Julian Tavares. But Hershiser got out in front of Diaz back in the 4th. 2 strikes, then threw him a high fastball, and Diaz ripped it to center. No further damage. He worked out of that inning. But this is kind of surprising tonight, Bob, that Hershiser is the guy that trails in this game. And Mike Hargrove told us before the game 100 pitches possibly would be it for him.
Hit hard again by Diaz, but Lofton closes ground and makes the play. Throws in behind the runner, not accurately. But Martinez would have been back anyway. Well, Diaz has had excellent hacks up there tonight against Hershiser.
He really has, and here's a ball that Lofton almost misjudged, and his thrown out. Here's a problem on this kind of a night. Your fingers get so cold, I mean, your hands are cold, and the ball, Bob, really feels slippery. I mean, despite the fact it's not wet, the ball really does feel slippery. You can see Lofton with his hand moving it back and forth and squeezing his hand. The ball, I mean, it just slips out of your hand. You fire, and it just slips out of your hand. Can't do much about it.
Soho 0 for 2 tonight. 4 for 15 in the series. 2 out now with a man at second. And strike 1.
That might be the best pitch he gets against Hershiser in this AB. I think that was kind of a mistake by Orel, and Soho didn't have a whack at it. This ball looks like it's right down the middle. And it is. That was a slider that backed up on him.
Down and away, 1-1.
He doesn't give you those pitches too often. I mean, that's a mistake by Hershiser. Anybody else, I mean, he's going to try and stay down and away or jam this guy. Soho go up and away on him because he'll chase.
A weak swing, 1-2.
Yeah, another breaking ball. I mean, that's his scene. Down and away, down and away. And I mean, on Martinez, Edgar Martinez, he just consistently stays out there. Here it is again. Breaking ball down low and away, and Soho went after it. Don't think this guy can't reach those, though, from time to time. He's a wild swinger. Uses the whole ballpark.
He wouldn't bite on that one, 2-2. Through 5 2/3, Hershiser has struck out 8. He's walked 2. And approaching that 100-pitch figure on 3 days rest. Only the second time in 7 years that he started on such short rest. Soho taps it back in front of the plate. Hershiser will take care of him. In the bottom of the sixth, it'll be Bell, Murray, and Thome. Still a one-run game.
Well, Albert Bell is going to lead off here in the sixth inning. Here's his previous two ABs against Fazio. That was his first time up tonight, back in the opening inning. Swung at a bad breaking ball. Second time up, looks at a slider on the outside, called out on strikes. Got a tough night tonight. Dropped an easy fly ball off the bat of Ken Griffey that led to the lead run in this game.
And struck out twice. They did everything they could to get him ready as quickly as possible to return to the lineup. Thus far, he hasn't contributed. Lines this one hard, but Strange is right there at third base.
Now, you can't hit it much better than Albert Bell did unless you get some elevation on it. Here's a bullet with Strange right on it. And Fazio retires, the first hitter here in the sixth.
Now it'll be Murray. Who has a pair of singles tonight. When Bell couldn't go last night, they moved Eddie up to the cleanup spot, and he delivered a first-inning two-run homer.
Again, Fazio off speed, his opening offering on Eddie Murray, who from the left side loves to hit hard stuff, loves to hit a fastball, sits on a fastball and loves to hit it.
And he rips this one down the right field line. It's in there for a hit. Now Buhner is over, skids on the warning track. That allows Murray to head for second. Buhner's idea, even though the ball was nearly to the track, was that with Murray running, if he could get there and cut it off, he might be able to hold him to a long single. But once he lost his footing, Eddie had the double.
And Jay Buhner limping slightly. You're exactly right, Bob. Here it is again. I think this was an off-speed pitch from Fazio. And he rips it down the line in right. And here is Buhner, and I think on that warning track out there, he may have skinned himself a little bit and came up limping. But if he makes the play on this ball, he holds Murray to a single. But he didn't. Ball got by him.
Eddie now 3 for 3. Thome has walked and flied out. He and Ramirez with a shot at getting the run home. Ball 1 to him. The Indians have left 5. 2 innings have ended on double plays. They've hit several balls hard off Fazio. They have just an unearned run in the first to show for it, though.
Dan Wilson holding the pose on that last offering from Fazio. I tell you what, if that's Fazio's fastball, it's kind of tough to tell from up here. But if that's his fastball, he's not throwing very hard tonight. Maybe 80. That may have been a change of pace, a straight change. And again, just missing.
When you can't tell the change from the fastball,
you're in trouble.
The 2-0. A long drive to right and tell it goodbye. For Fazio, but he leaves behind now 3-2, and when you don't have quite enough hop on the ball to throw it past hitters and you fall behind 2-0, this is what happens.
Well, I'll guarantee you this. That last one was a fastball, and Jim Thome, as soon as he hit it, knew it was gone to the second deck and right. A fastball right down the middle. And look at the crowd behind Thome. Everybody knew it was out of here. His second home run in postseason play, and the Indians have the lead now at 3-2. No doubt about that one. And again, Bosio behind on him and had to come in, and Thome made him pay. There it is. That's the man who caught it. And we'll be back. 3-2 Cleveland.
Thome isn't back up again. That's another look at the ball he just walloped into the second deck to turn a 2-1 deficit just like that into a 3-2 lead, and every reason to be beaming. Charlie Manuel, the batting coach, with him.
Well, again, Seattle cannot be unhappy with what they've gotten out of Bosio here tonight. And the man who got things going, Eddie Murray, with a one-out double, his third hit tonight. As you look at Earl Hershiser, who may have seen his last inning of work tonight, there is Eddie Murray, who scored in front of the long home run by Thome. As you said, Bob, he got it all.
Nelson's first hitter is Ramirez with one out. In on his fist, foul ball. Bosio worked 5 1/3. 7 hits, 3 runs, 2 of them earned. Walked 2, struck out 3. But look at this 6th inning. Bell hit the first pitch like a rocket, but Strange stabbed it at third. Then Murray ripped one down the right field line, and Thome launched one into the second deck. So by the time he left, Bosio was getting close to throwing batting practice. Nelson dropping down sidearm, and Ramirez squibs it foul.
Well, again, they got an unearned run against Bosio back in the opening inning. But if you know Bosio and you watch him work, I mean, that's the way he works, Bob. I mean, he's going to give up a lot of balls that are hit hard, and I don't care how hard they're hit. If they're hit at somebody, they're an out. But again, after he fell behind on Thome, he grooved the fastball, and no doubt about it, gone. 3-2.
He came pretty close to giving Lou Piniella exactly what he would have hoped for. If he could have gotten through the 6th with the lead or even with the score tied, that would have been just perfect. As it is, he's kept them in the game and he's given them a chance.
Absolutely. Only down by a run here in the 6th inning. So, I mean, it's nothing major. But again, the Indian bullpen that has been so strong all year long, when you talk about nothing major, it could be major. A run down. And here's another guy, Jeff Russell, who throws a lot of breaking stuff. I should say Jeff Nelson. Did I say Jeff Russell? I did say Jeff Russell. Jeff Nelson. But throws a lot of breaking stuff, a lot of sidearm stuff, fastball, and that big sweeping curve.
Tadara's the right-hander. Assenmacher, the veteran left-hander. Nelson, a big guy, 6'8". Misses, full count to Ramirez. Now it's going to be interesting to see as Thome warms his hands after warming this place up with a 2-run shot that gave them the lead. Interesting to see what Hargrove decides to do with Hershiser. He has the deep bullpen. Hershiser was right around 100 pitches, which was the figure Hargrove was looking at. Ramirez doesn't get it and goes down swinging. And he's got to be thinking about the possibility of using Hershiser for an inning or two on 2 days rest if there is a 7th game. This 1995 League Championship Series game is brought to you by the employee owners of Avis. We're into the future, into it now, trying harder than ever. Network MCI, how to get modern communications technology working for your business. And Chevrolet, the cars and trucks 36 million people depend on every day. Genuine Chevrolet.
Well, he's got a left-hander and a right-hander going in the bullpen. And, I mean, if he's not going to shut Hershiser down, although Dan Wilson is scheduled to lead off the 7th for Seattle. If he's not going to shut Hershiser down, then you got to shut down the bullpen. Poole and Tavares are up out there.
Hershiser has thrown exactly 93 pitches.
What did he say? 100 he told us, didn't he? Yeah. Well, he looks like he's ready to come back out again.
Getting those contacts lubricated. Sorrento is struck out and flied out. Look at that control.
Yep.
In there, 2-2.
You know, this guy is not too bad either when you're talking about somebody who's going to stay with one pitch and try to get you to chase. Talking about Jeff Nelson. Left-hander, right-hander. And when you throw sidearm, Bob, as you well know, you've seen enough and watched enough hitters and pitchers. If you're going to throw sidearm stuff to breaking balls to left-handed batters, I mean, you better make it in a good spot. I mean, someplace where they can't really get the fat of the bat on it, out over the plate, or down low and inside, or backdoor stuff, as he tried to do on Sorrento right there.
It was the breaking ball there. It was high, but far enough outside.
Yeah.
Paul couldn't get a good whack at it. But that homer off Tomey's bat just electrified this place.
Yep.
The 2-2. Foul off. The Atlanta Braves watching all this. And here's the guy who caught Tomey's home run, we're told.
It was crushed. There was no doubt about it. That's a long ways, isn't it?
Auxiliary press facilities out there. So the guy's got a souvenir and can make a phone call and maybe fax his own game report someplace if he'd like.
You know, I was surprised when I looked out there at the home run and saw those empty seats, and I don't know what that is out there, if there's canvas or some type of plastic that is covering those seats.
It's the auxiliary press box out
Okay,
there.
but is that, am I seeing plastic out there or not?
I'm not sure what you're seeing on some occasions, so I really wouldn't hazard a guess.
That's what I'm seeing. Okay. All right, I see it. There they are.
Sorrento with a 2-out walk. Watching all of this now, the Atlanta Braves, and even though the Mariners or Indians would be a formidable test, and Atlanta-Cleveland might be the World Series most baseball fans have been looking toward all season long, Atlanta's going to have the edge because the series opens in Atlanta, and they'll have their pitching perfectly set up. Maddox will be ready, and everything else will fall into place after that. They were able to end it in a sweep. Now they can sit back. Alomar doubled and grounded out. Nelson's 1-0 pitch to him. Bouncing ball right side. Cora to his left. Flags it down. Whirling throw. Pulls Martinez off the bag. Some play anyway.
Well, I want to tell you, we've talked about Joey Cora and his range. Watch this one. He almost makes a heck of a play. A leaping stab, spins, throws, and it pulls Martinez off the bag with Alomar reaching. Another nice play by Cora. But a base hit. Back in the 5th, he made a heck of a play on Lofton and appeared to throw him out at first with Drew Coble, the first base umpire, calling him safe. And there's Joey Cora again. Day late and $1 short. You know, getting back to a little talk we had earlier about Alomar, I want to finish this. I'm going to talk about it.
All of America hangs on the answer.
I don't want people going to work tomorrow and saying, hey, did they ever finish that story about Alomar? Did you hear anything about Alomar today? People, you know, driving off the freeway and everything else.
Please let the other shoe drop.
Alomar, we talked earlier about him tearing the webbing between his fingers. The skin.
Yep.
On his bare hand, throwing hand. He did it blocking a ball in the dirt. Hit him in the bare hand and tore it. End of story. Everybody, I hope, can sleep tonight.
And Nelson to Lofton. A ball high. A collective sigh of relief from sea to shining sea.
I couldn't have went home tonight without finishing that baby up. Or to Seattle.
The 1-0. In the seats, 1-1.
And I know you would have left me hang all night long. Tomorrow morning, you would ask me, hey, did you ever finish that story? Wouldn't you?
I would have bailed you out if I'd known the answer. Lofton lined out twice, once into a double play. Then had an infield single and stolen base. Two and one.
Well, Nelson almost threw that ball by Dan Wilson. That was a high outside offering that Wilson managed to get a glove on and hold. Watch this one. High fastball that almost got by. Right in the weather.
The middle three games of the World Series will be in the American League Park. If the Indians beat the Mariners, and we move another 10 days or so into October and toward Halloween, there could be some very chilly nights at this ballpark.
Oh, you may have Indian summer by that time.
Which would be appropriate, especially if the Braves and Indians meet.
That would put the temperature at about 40.
2-2. Now, Lofton backed out. He thought it was ball three and didn't get the word from McClellan, the Nook of the North looking on, evidently. Didn't get the word from McClellan until a second or two later.
If that was a lady, you're in trouble, buddy. The Nook of the North?
Well, let's hope she didn't set the home VCR. Let's hope, like me, she can't figure out how to do it.
See you, pal.
Punched foul. I just hope she has that number 12 flashing incessantly on her VCR. She can't figure out how to program it. Otherwise, I got to grab an even earlier flight to Seattle. It's cool here. You know, just write your own captions now.
Yeah. Let's back off of this. It's breezy here, that's all.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing.
The Indians were 54-18 in this ballpark in the course of going 144 in the regular season. The Mariners were 8 under 500 on the road, did most of their damage at the Kingdome. 2-2 pitch. Called, strike three. And now Lofton is really going to let McClellan have it. Upset about two of those pitches. And McClellan jawing right back at him. Indians take the lead, but we're back after this from your local station. Albert Bell is out. Wayne Kirby, who started in his place last night, comes in the top of the seventh defensively in left field. But Bell was due to be the third hitter in the bottom of the seventh, which makes you think, as Hershiser is offered congratulations by his teammates, he's leaving and Tavares comes out of the bullpen. Makes you think that it was more than just a precaution. If they wanted to take Bell out as a precaution, chances are they let him bat in the bottom half of the seventh since he's scheduled to be the third hitter. This makes me think that maybe the ankle is acting up on him a little bit.
Well, he was doubtful tonight, Bob. They told us last night that he would not play in last night's game and was doubtful for tonight. But when we got to the ballpark, Albert Bell said he was going to play, and despite the fact that he may have been feeling some pain, did play in the game. And it was not a typical Albert Bell performance tonight. A costly fly ball that he misjudged and dropped for an error that led to a run. The Indians are back on top. That's all that counts right now for them.
And maybe even though he's due to hit third, nursing just a one-run lead, moving toward the late innings, and with the misadventures that Bell has had in the outfield, maybe the move is simply for defense, and he doesn't care about losing one at-bat. Here's Sorrento kicking the ball after first stopping it, and Wilson reaches.
Well, they won without Bell and Alomar last night. And again tonight, Kirby in there now, defensively left. Here's that last play, a play that Sorrento, if he catches this ball cleanly, they have the play on Wilson. But as he knocked it down, he also kicked it. And that allows Wilson to reach. That's the tying run.
And it's scored as an error, the third charged against the Indians tonight.
That's a ball he should have handled very easily.
Cora 1 for 2 with a walk. Hit hard, Sorrento stops it from his knees, throws to second, wide of the bag, pulled Vizquel off. Everybody's safe.
That's going to be another error charged to the Indians. Another error charged to Paul Sorrento. He made a heck of a play on a sharply hit ball by Cora. Now from his knees, he tries to make a throw to Vizquel. And you can see Vizquel well off the bag to try and stop the throw. It was a one-hopper. Here it is again. Cora hit that ball hard. Good diving stab by Sorrento to start the play. Now the throw in the dirt. And Vizquel with a nice play to stop it from going to left, but he was off the bag, and a good call at second by Darrell Cousins. Wow, 2 errors in the inning. That's the 4th in this game for the Indians.
And a chance for Edgar Martinez to finally come through in this series. Lined out, struck out twice against Hershiser. 1 for 18, unbelievably.
It really is.
In this series.
He hit the ball hard his first time up tonight when he lined to Lofton in center. But since then, has struck out twice. And Vizquel to the mound now for a couple of words with Julian Taveras.
This could be Taveras' last hitter because Assenmacher's getting ready. And in the 7th inning, 1-run game, I don't think you want to fool around with Griffey.
Nope, you're right. There's Plunk, the right-hander, Assenmacher, the left-hander. Plunk gave up that big home run to Buhner in the opener of this series to win it.
2-0.
And again, Taveras just missing off the outside corner on that fastball to Martinez. And again, they're trying to stay strictly away on him. Here comes Mark Wiley. Nope, that's Mike Hargrove. That's Mike Hargrove. Out to talk with Taveras about his work now on Edgar Martinez. I mean, the fact that Martinez has labored so much in this series, you still have to go right at him. And maybe Hargrove talking about the fact, hey, don't walk this guy and don't try to be too careful with him. Go with your stuff.
While they confer, we can tell you that Tuesday at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, Game 6 of this series will come to you from the Kingdome in Seattle. Game 6, Tuesday night, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific.
You know, we talked earlier about Martinez, Bob, and how quickly a hitter goes into these types of slumps. And the same holds true for coming out of them. I mean, one good pitch, a bad pitch, talking about a hanger maybe, or a ball that's really in a zone for you to drive and hit deep, and everything all of a sudden makes everybody happy.
The 2-0 pitch. It's softly to third. Tony. His play is to second for the force. The out is recorded. The ball was dropped after Cora made his takeout slide and knocked Baerga down. So runners at the corners now. And Edgar Martinez, again, hasn't hit more than 2 or 3 balls solidly in this entire series.
You see that swing, Bob, and where his head was? I mean, instead of his head being right on the ball, and there was a pitch that he could have driven back up the middle as Mike Hargrove comes out, and that's going to be all for Julian Taveras or Julian Taveras. But again, a ball that Martinez could have driven towards right or up the middle, and he tried to pull it, hit that little roller.
This is where the depth of Hargrove's bullpen comes in. When you get into the left-right-left portion of the dangerous Seattle lineup. Assenmacher coming in, the right-hander Plunk throwing. And we'll step aside for just a moment. And a very short line tonight where they're selling frozen drinks. You know, if you want a frozen drink tonight, just buy a soda and stick it on the ledge for about 5 minutes.
Get a cup of coffee. Take a cup of coffee and hold it for 4 innings.
Well, Assenmacher comes in now to face Griffey. Taveras wasn't his fault. A couple of errors behind him by Sorrento. Then he got Martinez to ground out weakly into a force play. Runners at first and third. Assenmacher has faced Griffey 1 time. Griffey homered against him. On the other hand, if he can get Griffey out here, I'm not so sure that they switched to Plunk to face Buhner, because after all, Buhner hit the 3-run homer in the 11th in Game 3 here on Friday night on a Plunk fastball.
Well, he threw a fastball strike on Buhner, talking about Plunk, and I think everybody in the ballpark, everybody on both ball clubs anyway, thought that Plunk would come with a breaking ball. He's got a good slider and throw it down and away, and and try to keep the ball in the ballpark against Buhner. He threw the high fastball, Bob, and he hit it out of here in right center.
Griffey against Assenmacher. Buhner on deck. Wilson at third, Martinez at first, and ball one outside and low. Maggie Assenmacher watching her husband face as dangerous a hitter, even though it's lefty-lefty, as he'll ever have to face in a clutch situation. Swing and a miss.
Now, here's another guy that, you know, you're talking about a veteran, a guy that's been around and knows what he can do best. This is Maggie's reaction to that last offering by Paul. Breaking ball down low and away. And similar to what Hershiser and Bosio do with their repertoire, stay breaking ball, and keep it out of Griffey's power. Try to stay down and away from him.
Good pitch, strike two.
Yes, he said.
Griffey tonight against Hershiser. Walked, doubled home a run, hit a fly ball that Bell dropped for an unearned run as Cora scored in the fifth. The 1-2 pitch struck him out. Oh, was that huge?
Boy, what a pitch by Assenmacher. That pitch was up on Griffey. High fastball. And he chased it. And he gets the strikeout. And here comes Hargrove one more time. Here's that last pitch by Assenmacher. High fastball, and Griffey can't catch up to it. He starts him breaking ball, comes fastball, call strike, and here's the swing and a miss by Griffey for the strikeout.
Ken Griffey Sr.'s reaction quite a bit different than that of Maggie Assenmacher.
Well, he knows. He's been there many times. Boy, if you could hit, if you could hit every pitch, there's Maggie Assenmacher again. And as you suggested a moment ago, Bob, Hargrove is going to stay with Assenmacher against Buhner. But, again, everybody knows, and I don't care who you are and what kind of a pitcher you are or hitter, you can't hit every pitch, you can't throw everyone for a strike, and you can't make every play. No chance. It's a tough game. A lot of pressure, a lot of heat.
Hargrove went out to talk with Assenmacher, but not to make a pitching change. He won't tempt fate a second time. He saw what Buhner did against Plunk on Friday.
Well, Assenmacher will throw breaking balls. I mean, he's got a good curveball, good breaking ball. Shaking off one now from Alomar. And again, Buhner likes the ball upstairs. He had a high breaking ball off of Nagy for his first home run in this series, and then hit that high fastball off of Plunk out of here in right center.
Buhner went out in front of the plate to spear a loose piece of paper with his bat, get it out of his line of vision.
There's the breaking ball right there from Assenmacher, trying to keep it down and possibly even inside on Buhner. You know, if you get something up on this guy and out over the plate, even from a left-hander like Assenmacher, he can hit you, hurt you deep.
1-1. Breaking ball down and in on him.
Down and in. Tough pitch to handle. It really is. I mean, even if you do handle it, you can't hardly hit a ball like this fair. And many times you'll see a hitter drive this one off his instep or off the shin.
Buhner was 0 for 3 with a pair of strikeouts against Hershiser. 1-2 now as Assenmacher gets in front. The bottom just dropped out. Buhner swung over it by a foot. The 1-2 pitch. High and away.
Al, as he did with Griffey. Threw the breaking ball. Fastball that he looked. And Junior chased the high fastball. Assenmacher tried to do the same thing on Buhner. High fastball. He wouldn't go after it.
Struck him out. I don't know that Paul Assenmacher ever faced two more important hitters. And he fanned them both. When Assenmacher got Buhner to end the inning and leave runners at first and third, the ballpark exploded. Maggie Assenmacher jumping up and down in delight. But Paul Sorrento was the guy who had to heave a sigh of relief because he had made the 2 errors, and Assenmacher got him off the hook. First fanning Griffey with 1st and 3rd and 1 out, and then getting Buhner on this one to end the inning. Vizquel starts it in the last half of the 7th. Paul Sorrento, the 2 errors now a footnote. They could have been a disaster. Baerga next, and then Kirby hitting in Bell's spot. One and 2. Omar's 0 for 2 with a walk and a stolen base. Hargrove with Wiley as pitching coach.
Boy, what a big pair of strikeouts for Assenmacher against Griffey, the left-hander, but then the right-hander, and I mean staying right with the breaking stuff, through the high fastball to show Buhner, then comes back with that nasty curve to strike him out. And you're right, taking Sorrento off the hook after a couple of errors, and there's Maggie Assenmacher again. More than elated tonight. What a job.
Protecting a 1-run lead in the pivotal Game 5, 1st and 3rd, 1 out. That's a tough situation no matter who you're facing. But consider that it was Griffey and then Buhner. Vizquel spoils another one, 2 and 2.
A good ball game tonight. I mean, not the fact that it's been played so sharply, but the fact that, I mean, when you had Hershiser and Bosio starting, everybody thought it would be an easy outing for Hershiser, but Bosio, as you said, Bob, kept the Mariners in the ballgame. 3-2 here in the 7th.
And Vizquel hanging in against Nelson. I would not be at all surprised if Assenmacher came out to start the 8th, because the scheduled leadoff man is Tino Martinez, left-handed hitter. Then you've got 2 switch hitters, Strange and Diaz. And Strange is thought to be much more effective from the left side, and there's your proof. Nothing doing in the bullpen. Line drive for a base hit for Vizquel. Does it get in the gap? No. Buhner gets over and cuts it off. And Vizquel is content with a single. In fact, he might be delighted with it, since it's just his 2nd hit of the series. Let's learn what the story is with Albert Bell as we go to Jim Gray.
Bob, Dave Nelson, the first base coach for the Indians, told us it was strictly for defensive purposes that Albert Bell was taken out. He'd struggled out in the field a couple of times. They just wanted to get Kirby in. The plan was to get him another at-bat, Albert Bell, but when Tomei hit the home run, they figured, let's get him out, and let's not see any more of that play in the field that he'd been struggling with so far this evening. Bob?
Thanks, Jim. So if they had been trailing or tied, Albert would have stayed in for this last at-bat. When they got the lead, they go to Kirby. Baerga. Ball 1-2.
Well, they've got the lead. I mean, Kirby, the better defensive player. We've seen him come in for Ramirez in right. And the bullpen that has been so solid for the Indians all year long is busy now. There is somebody up out there now.
Outside 2-0. Bill Risley, who worked late in last night's game in a mop-up role, warming in the Mariner bullpen. Lou Pinella's line this week: the playoffs are made for second guessing. Some will say it won't be fair, but they'll say it anyway, that he let Bosio face one hitter too many. There goes the runner. Here comes the throw from Wilson. And it's ball 4, so scratch the stolen base. A walk to Baerga.
You know, I don't know if Wilson, again, thought this pitch was a strike. And again, Bob, despite the fact that you see McClellan from time to time giving you that delayed call with his arm, this is not that's a ball. That pitch is low. I don't know why Wilson made the throw he did. He took a heck of a chance. If you make a bad throw and nobody's covering, it's ball 4. The runner goes to third easily.
Alex Kirby occupying the cleanup spot. But he's going to sacrifice here in all likelihood. He squares and misses the bunt, actually taps it foul.
Oh, not a very good attempt by Kirby that time. Ball that he really didn't square around the bunt. Jeff Newman with probably, more than likely, the same sign for Kirby. See if he squares around this time and tries to poke it up along third.
Funk, the right-hander. Poole, the southpaw. Squares the bunt, gets this one down. Nelson's play is to first. And Kirby gets it done. One-4 with Cora covering at first.
Here it is again. Kirby's bunt back to Nelson. And with Cora covering, they retire Kirby. And the runners advance to second and third. Nice sacrifice. And the Indians with a chance to add on here. Think he's not happy?
He's happy to get a chance to contribute.
What a pleasant guy.
First base open, even though Thome, who homered, is next. Murray is 3 for 3. Has hit the ball hard all 3 times. They're going to walk him. Set up the double play or the force at home if they should have a chance to make that play. Now, a moment ago, when we checked the bullpen, it was Risley, the right-hander, throwing for Seattle. As Thome steps up, Piniella wants to make a change. The only lefty he has out there is his closer, Norm Charlton. So he's going to go to Risley. He doesn't have the percentage going for him here.
Well, it's a fresh arm is what Piniella is going for. Nelson, who came on after Fazio gave up the 2-run blast to Thome back in the 6th, worked out of the 6th, gave up the leadoff base hit, a walk, and then the sacrifice before the free ride for Eddie Murray. And it's Bill Risley, the youngster, a hard-throwing right-hander coming on to face the left-handed batting Jim Thome.
Here's what happened the last time Thome stepped to the plate, following a double by Eddie Murray, and with the Mariners clinging to a 2-1 lead. This was the last pitch. Chris Fazio threw, and it just about wound up in another area code.
He was behind in the count, talking about Fazio, and threw the fastball, and Thome knocked it out of here to put the Indians on top.
For his career against Risley, Thome is 0 for 3. Did you see who the first ball was thrown out by tonight at Jacobs Field?
Hey, you know, I was talking with Herb Score, Indians broadcaster, before the game tonight, Bob, and he said, you know who's thrown out the first ball? I said, no. He said, Rocky Colavito. I said, get out of here. He said, yeah, he's here tonight. And Rocky, who lives in Pennsylvania, and does a lot of hunting and fishing and relaxing, and he's here tonight. Yeah, he looks good, too. You saw him before the game. I saw him down in the field. And
it's pretty much mandatory for all ball players of your era, once they retire, or for that matter in the off-season, to spend all their time hunting and fishing. The back of every baseball card I ever looked at as a kid, hobbies, hunting and fishing.
They tell you that just to get rid of you.
They sent you hunting and fishing during the season, didn't they?
You want to do us a favor? I said, yeah, do anything you want. We'll just send you on a hunting and fishing trip. And, oh, that's going to be great for January, boy. They said, no, now, June 1st, we want you. And you're going to Yellowstone.
The saying around here used to be, don't knock the rock.
Don't knock the rock, that's right.
Until Albert Bell hit 50 this year. The last Indian to lead the league in home runs was Rocky Colavito. He hit 42 of them in 1959. Hit over 370 lifetime. The terrific sports writer Terry Pluto of the Akron Beacon Journal who covers the Tribe, wrote a book a couple of years ago called The Curse of Rocky Colavito, tracing all their woes to the very unpopular 1960 trade that sent the home run champion Colavito out of Cleveland to Detroit in return for the batting champion Harvey Keene. And from that point on, the Indians went 34 seasons, averaging 23 games out of first place.
He was, what, could he throw? Did he have an arm?
Tremendous arm in right field, Rocky Colavito.
Sure did. What a great hand as he walked out of the Indian dugout tonight for the first ball ceremony. It was nice to see him.
So now, with the bases loaded and 1 out, bottom of the 7th, the Indians up by a run, but with a chance to break it open. The pitch to Thome. Fouled it off his foot, which never feels good, but feels particularly painful on a cold night like tonight.
You know, the way the catcher went after that ball, I didn't know if he fouled it or not, but he did. As you said, did that get him on the knee, on the top of the knee?
Might have gotten him, who knows where.
Doesn't make any difference, does it?
To him, it does.
I thought it hit him on the. It hit him on the left leg. How do you do that? It did. Shingar didn't help him that time.
From the stretch with the bases loaded, the 0-1 pitch. That made Edgar Martinez abandon his seat. The Mariner DH.
That's the Mariners' shortstop of the future sitting there alongside of Martinez, Alex Rodriguez.
Risley gets ahead, 0-2. Did he go around? They punch him out. From third base, Rick Reed says you're gone. Risley came in needing the strikeout, and on 3 pitches, he got it.
It's a check swing by Thome. And a good call by the third base umpire, Rick Reed. He went way around too far, and he gets the big strikeout. Here it is again. Yep, no doubt about that one. And Thome, after the home run back in the 6th, with the bases loaded, goes down on strikes.
Now it's up to Ramirez. Hitless tonight. Grounded into a force, hit into a 6-4-3 double play, then struck out. Indians 3, Mariners 2. Bottom of the 7th, game 5, series even. The Indians swept the Red Sox. They've been severely tested by Seattle. The 1-0 pitch from Risley to Ramirez. Outside, 2-0. Well, this is where the hitter can afford to guess, can afford to confine himself to a zone.
You can if you're really an experienced hitter, Bob. You get a guy like Ramirez up there now with the bases loaded. I mean, he's looking fastball probably, and wherever it is, I mean, he's going to go. There you look at Risley with his grip on this next offering.
3-0. So he strikes Thome out on 3 pitches. His next 3 to Ramirez all miss. strike right down the middle with Ramirez taking all the way.
And the grave, the lack of experience with some of these kids on the Seattle Ball Club, Bob, in their first year in the big leagues, first couple of months in the big leagues, they find themselves in postseason play with the heat on now. I mean, especially a kid like this, Risley.
Vizquel has been dancing down the line at third, trying to rattle him. A pitch away from forcing home an insurance run here. In the air to right. Buhner is going to end the inning by tucking this one away. Great relief work for both bullpens in the seventh. The view from the Goodyear Blimp Spirit of Akron. Looking down upon Jacobs Field. We move to the eighth. And Assenmacher does, in fact, hold on to the ball. As Hargrove lets him start this eighth inning against Tino Martinez. And there's strike one. An inning after, Paul Sorrento almost created a disaster. Herbert Perry is in there defensively at first base, the rookie. Sorrento booted one ball, hit by Wilson, that actually made a very good play on a ball hit by Cora, but then on the throw to second, trying to get the force, he pulled Vizquel off the bag. Errors on consecutive plays by Sorrento. Eventually, the Mariners had runners at first and third with one out, and the big guns Griffey and Buhner coming up. Assenmacher came out of the pen and struck them both out. A weak pop off Martinez's bat. Who wants it? Vizquel. Doug Strange is done now. And Vince Coleman, another switch hitter, benched tonight because of his hitting woes. He's also had a few misplays in left field, too. So Piniella, who was considering doing that last night and let Coleman play, did bench him in favor of Alex Diaz in left field and move Cora into the leadoff spot. Now he'll use him as a pinch hitter, which was something he was pointing toward before the game began. He said, look, this gives me Vince to either pinch hit or pinch run in a one-run game. So it gives me a little extra room to maneuver from my bench.
You know, and talking about Coleman, as you see Mike Hargrove coming out now, and talking about Coleman and a couple of misplays that he had in the series, I'm surprised there haven't been more tonight. I mean, there have been a couple of balls, one by Bell that was blowing around, and it cost him an error, and a couple of balls early in the game, that one that Diaz made a diving try on and couldn't come up with, another that Buhner tried to catch in right. We talked earlier about the weather and the wind blowing so much here tonight. It was driving line drives down into the ground, Bob, and again, with the wind blowing the way it is, it's raw, cold, windy here tonight, and it's still been a heck of a ball game. 3-2, and Assenmacher, a heck of a job, leaves this game, and Eric Plunk, a right-hander, coming on now to pitch here in the eighth inning for the Indians. There is Maggie Assenmacher, who was thrilled and elated back in the seventh with the two strikeouts, one to Griffey, one to Buhner, and now here to Martinez on the little pop fly to retire the first hitter in the eighth inning.
That's Paul Assenmacher's dad, Leo. Family members surrounding him. Reason to be proud tonight. Let's echo, though, Lou Piniella's quote of earlier this week. The playoffs are made for second guessing. Assenmacher has pitched extremely well. 2 strikeouts, and he gets Martinez to pop up. Now you got Coleman, a switch hitter, coming up. He goes to Plunk, and that allows Coleman to bat left-handed, which, if he comes up with an infield hit or dribbles the ball in the infield, gives him a better chance to beat it out. Well, this is the MCI proof positive replay of the game, and it's Assenmacher's strikeout of Buhner coming on the heels of Griffey fanning. to end that 7th inning. But getting back to what I was saying, if Coleman should reach, with Ossenmacher, the left-hander, you have a little bit of a better chance to hold him on base than against a right-handed pitcher. So you could look at this a couple of ways. Hargrove said, give me Plunk.
Well, you know, I mean, you've got to stay with the guys who brought you, and Eric Plunk has done a heck of a job, despite the fact that he gave up a home run the other night. And he said, hey, you know, once in a while the hitter wins too. He's had such great success this year as a setup man for Mesa to come on and work in the 9th inning. And I don't care who you are, and managers all have their little habits and what have you as far as the bullpen goes, pitching coaches. If this is the guy that brought you, you got to bring him in these kind of situations, Bob. I mean, it shows a pitcher that you've got confidence in him, and I mean, he's done it for you all year long.
They're 2 outs away from Mesa if they can maintain the lead. Let's go downstairs and check with Jim Gray.
All right, Bob, we have some updated information on Albert Bell. Jim Warfield, the trainer of the Indians, just came out and told us that Albert Bell's ankle did, in fact, stiffen up his right ankle, and he went to Hargrove. Knowing the plan, he said he better accelerate this just a little bit because the ankle is bothering him, and he's back in the training room getting a little help to his ankle. Bob?
Jim, thanks. If the Mariners don't come back, it's Randy Johnson on 3 days rest, Tuesday, Game 6 at the Kingdome. If they can somehow pull this game out, then they might very well go with Bob Wolcott, 22-year-old rookie Game 1 starter, and hold Johnson back for a possible Game 7. In any case, it's Dennis Martinez for the Indians. Coleman, the pinch hitter, from the left side. Ball 1 from Plunk.
Plunk, a very hard thrower with a good slider, splitter. Been a great setup man for Mesa all year long.
A strike to Coleman. Although Vince slumped during this series, he was just great for them after he came over from Kansas City in August.
He started 38 of 44 regular season games after coming over from the Royals.
2-1.
Excellent. In the leadoff spot, the Mariners were sorely in need of a leadoff hitter, and this guy came over and did a heck of a job.
In that stretch run, he celebrated his 34th birthday with a grand slam home run, the first of his career. I think that was against Oakland, a game they trailed by 6 or 7 and came back to win.
Yeah.
Just about tore the roof off the Kingdome. Well, now it's 3-1.
Well, we got all the umpires, 42,000 plus here in Jacobs Field tonight. Thinking that pitch was a strike, a little bit low on a fastball. Out here, still hanging in, bundled up on a raw, windy night in Cleveland.
He walked it. Again, I have to wonder about this. And you're looking at the guy who might be the manager of the year. And if he gets it, and Lou Piniella and the other dugout will get plenty of support, Kevin Kennedy with the Red Sox, if he gets it, he deserves it. He has done a great job. But you let Coleman bat left-handed in this situation. Now that he's on first, you don't have the left-hander to hold him on, assuming he even was able to reach against Ossenmacher, and Ossenmacher had pitched so well.
Well, Hargrove thought that pitch was a strike, and he was jawing with the home plate umpire, Tim McClellan. But it's not one pitch in a situation like this. Plunk fell behind him and then missed on the last two. That one was close. The other one was low.
Now Diaz, who has doubled, singled, lined out hard to center. Coleman goes on the first pitch. Then he bluffs and comes back. Bluffed to go. Slammed on the brakes and came back. And now here comes Hargrove.
And as you suggested, Bob, with the runner aboard and the threat of Coleman stealing, Hargrove here may make a change. We'll see. He's talking with Alomar and Plunk. And he has a left-hander in the bullpen. It's Jim Poole. But does he make the change here or not? Tim McClellan is coming out. And this may be an opportunity for Hargrove to ask him about that pitch on Coleman. We'll see. And I'll guarantee you that's what it is.
McClelland is gently pressing Hargrove for a decision here. What are you going to do? Let's get on with it one way or the other.
He's talking about that strike, or what he thought was a strike anyway, on Coleman.
Part of the beauty of the game, there's so many different ways to play it. You sit up here, or in the stands, or at home in front of the TV set, and make your own best guess. But it's these guys who are on the line.
Yep, absolutely. As I said before, Bob, it's not one pitch. It's not one pitch. I mean, you guys say, well, he hung a breaking ball, or he did this, or he did that. But it's not one pitch that's going to win or lose a ball game more often than not. I mean, he had fallen behind on Coleman, and then misses on a borderline pitch, and everybody says, well, that should have been a strike, or it was a strike. And it may have been. But it's not the one pitch that's going to change this game around.
One out, top of the 8th. Coleman at first in a one-run game. Diving back. Coleman began his career by leading the National League in steals 6 consecutive seasons. He topped 100 3 times with the Cardinals. Among the league leaders this year with 42. There he goes. Pitch outside, and Alomar can't get rid of the throw. It looked like a good ball to throw on. Closest thing to a pitch out without being one, but Alomar couldn't get rid of it.
Well, he had a good offering to throw on, a high outside fastball, and never really got a handle on it. Watch this.
Coleman had a great jump.
Oh, yeah, it's a good pitch to throw on, though, Bob. And he just never got it cleanly in his hand to get any kind of a throw off. That's a good pitch to throw on. And Alomar just didn't handle it. But he did have a good jump. I don't know if he'd have thrown him out anywhere. Watch the jump. He's got 5 or 6 steps before Plunk ever let go of the ball. And the head first slide, he's in easily.
Now this one misses outside, and it's 3-0.
Be surprised to see Piniella let this guy go 3-0, Alex Diaz. He's got a little bit of power, and he's got a couple of base hits tonight. He's hit the ball hard 3 times, double, single, and a line drive to center.
Something's wrong with Sandy. He's waving any attention off.
Yep, I'm all right. Maybe a little bit of a cramp. I'm all right, he says.
Hargrove has been loath to use Jose Mesa for anything more than 1 inning all year long and in the playoffs. Let's see if we can pick something up here regarding Alomar. Hard to tell from that.
Here's where he started to have a problem if he had a slight cramp in the calf on the right side. That's all I can figure. He's all right now, though. Oh, Hargrove, he's all right. That's the backup catcher,
Tony Pena. And that's in there, 3-1. Again, a record of 144, a sweep of the Red Sox in the division series. It all speaks for itself. The bullpen overall has been the deepest and the best. The bullpen ERA far and away the best in the American League. But you could say this, look, you got a 1-run lead to protect. You've already burned Ossenmacher. Why not go to Mesa? Tomorrow's an off day. And now Plunk has walked both hitters he's faced. in theory, if he got the job done, you'd be asking Mesa to pitch an inning and 2/3.
Mike Hargrove, as Diaz was heading to first, hollered out at Alomar. He said, hey, go out and talk to him. Settle him down.
Mesa hasn't gotten up. Even though the temperature is at 50, that's just where the mercury sits. With the wind, they're telling us from the National Weather Service that the wind chill is around 20 down there on the field.
Well, I mean, this crowd is really starting to get upset here at Eric Plunk. Sooner or later, you fall behind on these guys, and you have to lay one in there, and somebody's going to bang one on you. And Soho's a guy with a little bit of power.
There's the 1-0 pitch to Soho, foul back to the screen. This is game one, and a big hit delivered by Soho off Dennis Martinez. A double off the wall. His wife enjoyed it, that's for sure. And the 1-1 pitch from Plum. Soho, in his usual fashion, just wailing away up there. You know, if Ted Williams is watching this at home in Florida, he must be cringing. But I don't think Luis really read My Turn at Bat by Ted Williams or studied all those charts.
You know, everybody's got their own style and batting stance and what have you. And a lot of hitters say, if I can reach it, it's a strike. And that's obviously one of this guy's characteristics. He's up there whacking. I like him. I really do.
Now Plunk works 1 and 2. And a drive hit hard but foul.
If he can reach it, and that's inside, outside, and what he seems to enjoy is something upstairs, and this pitch is upstairs by Plunk. That's a high slide. That was a hanger. And he got away with it.
That was dangerous. Maybe a bit too far inside for Soho to do much with it in terms of hitting it fair, but that's one that has you holding your breath. Now he slices one the other way, just kind of punching at it.
That was a tough pitch from Plunk. It really was. And he just goes down and tries to get a piece of it. This is a good pitch. Watch this. That's a good pitch. Look where his backside was, bailing out, but he still got enough to get out there and try to get it and fouled it off.
Soho's 0 for 3 tonight. 1-2 pitch. In right field, Ramirez racing toward the line, and this one is in the seats. Coleman, who walked and stole a base, is at second. Diaz, who also walked, is at first. 1 out, top of the 8th. 3-2 Cleveland. The starters, Bosio and Hershiser, are gone. Plunk on in relief. And Soho takes one down and in. 2 and 2.
That's a good ball game, isn't it, Bob? I mean, it hasn't been played all that sharply. There have been some errors in this game. 4 by the Indians tonight. But, I mean, here you are again in a situation, a jam situation, game on the line, or at least a chance for the Mariners to tie with only 1 out here in the 8th inning.
And the count runs out full to Soho.
Well, you run them now. Coleman from second and Diaz from first. And both can run. They both can run. Tomei playing very deep at third. Let's see if Piniella sends him.
Time is called.
And it was called by Jim Tomei. He had called time momentarily on evidently somebody from the dugout hollered at him, but he was playing very deep. And they're talking about where he's going to make his throw in case the ball is hit to him if they do run. It's got to go to first.
Plunk sets, wheels, and looks Coleman back. After Thome gave Cleveland the lead with a 2-run shot in the 6th, the Mariners have threatened both in the 7th and now here in the 8th. The runners go, and Soho lines into a double play. That could have been a triple play if they had needed it. Watch this ball leave Soho's bat. Just scorched. But it gets to Vizquel so quickly for the double play that Soho doesn't even have time to discard the bat. Cannot hit it harder than this. But watch Soho. Before he can get out of the box, the inning's over.
Look at the Indian dugout. You can't hit it much better. He hit it right at Vizquel. I told you Diaz could run. He was around second when Vizquel caught that ball and tagged Diaz, then stepped on the bag. They could have 6 outs on that play.
With the runners going, it was an easy double play, and that is the kind of ball where if you have that situation with nobody out, you get an unassisted triple play.
Absolutely. Yep. There's Omar Vizquel. Bad break for Seattle. Luis Soho hit a rocket.
Mesa now gets up, and he'll work the 9th.
You know, we talk so much about this Indian ball club. How about the job this kid did in the bottom half of the 7th inning, talking about Bill Risley striking out Thome and then getting Ramirez on a fly to right with the bases loaded.
The Indians had a chance then to break the game open. As it is, the narrowest of margins maintained. It's 3-2. Here's Herbert Perry, the rookie who replaced Sorrento for defense an inning ago, and he fouls it back. Perry, Alomar, Lofton, as they try to give Mesa some breathing room. Wilson, the catcher and number 9 hitter, scheduled to lead off in the top of the 9th, and back up top for Cora and the struggling Edgar Martinez. The 0-1 to Perry. Pop to the right side. Tino Martinez doesn't have enough room. Eric Plunk was almost being fitted for the Goat Horns for the 2nd time in 3 nights. Buhner took him deep in the 11th on Friday. Then he comes in to replace Assenmacher, who had been tremendously effective. He proceeds to walk Coleman. Coleman steals a base on him. He walks Diaz. And then Soho wallops one. I mean, you cannot hit a ball harder, but into a double play.
Well, he's finished for the night because it's going to be Mesa coming on to work the 9th. But again, Hargrove has used this guy all year long in that setup spot for Mesa, and he stayed with him tonight, despite the fact that Soho hit a rocket. He got out of it.
Fastball high, 1-2.
Little tight on a high inside fastball.
Lights that one off. The homer by Thome made Hershiser the pitcher of record. If Mesa protects the lead, Hershiser will be 7-0 in postseason play. No one has ever won as many games in the playoffs or World Series without a defeat. He had been tied with Lefty Gomez of the Yankees at 6-0. It would also equal Bob Gibson's record for most consecutive postseason victories. Gibby lost his first World Series decision, won 7 in a row before losing his last in World Series play. Outside to Perry, 2-2. hotel still laughing about the turn of events in the top half of the inning with Espinosa.
Is he wearing an earring?
I was wondering the same thing.
Not the fact that he's wearing an earring is bad, but that looked like a cheap earring.
It looked like an earring you might have gotten out of a box of Cracker Jacks.
Or a bottle cap to keep the... what is that?
It's definitely not something you need to check in the safe deposit box at the hotel.
Not at our hotel.
The 3-2 pitch to Perry. And that's out of play. As we look ahead to the ninth, let's check the bench strength. What remains for each manager. Espinosa and Pena, who's the reserve catcher. Switch hitting Ruben Amaro Jr. Who can Pinella call upon? We'll put that up after this next pitch. And Perry hangs in there.
Amaral, Fermin, Alex Rodriguez, the fine shortstop, along with Seattle's reserve catcher, Chris Widger. That's it for Pinella.
They have no left-handed hitters or switch hitters on the bench. Another 3-2 pitch to Perry. And this time he's got him with a good fastball. Kid Risley throws hard.
I'll tell you, he does. He's got a very good fastball, Bob, and a pretty good slider. And here's the fastball out of the strike zone, and Perry goes after it.
Alomar doubled, grounded out, had an infield hit. One out, bottom of the eighth, and ball one. Game 6 and 7, if a seventh is necessary, at the Kingdome. Oddly enough, Cleveland, with the best record in all of baseball, did not have home field and will not have home field in any series. They only had to play one in Boston in the division series, but would have played 3 had it gone the limit. 2 here, 3 there. This one is 4-3 Seattle, and the World Series this time on the alternating basis has the National League holding the home field advantage. Now, that's the way it always has been in baseball. It wasn't decided by regular season record, but having gone to a new format with the smaller divisions, with a balanced schedule, with wild cards in, there's a lot of sentiment for changing that around and not having those matchups predetermined this way. Big cut and a miss by Alomar. A team like Cleveland should receive some reward for what they accomplished during the regular season. You've got to be able to make a distinction between a team that wins 100 games and a wild card team, or a team like last year's Texas Rangers that might have won the whole division under 500.
All I know is we're going to Seattle tomorrow.
Yep, that is true. 2-2.
And to Atlanta.
That's where the series will begin next weekend, next Saturday and Sunday. American League City, Cleveland or Seattle for games 3, 4, and 5. Then back down south if a 6th game and a 7th should be required. Here it comes on 2-2. Alomar lays off.
You know, Bob, anybody that's watched this series and any of the postseason stuff, with the exception of the Boston series against the Indians, they swept it. Opening game of that series went extra innings, but anybody who watched that Yankee-Seattle series and did not enjoy that, I mean, you don't enjoy baseball, and that's what we may see again when we go back there. I mean, if they go back down by a game, and the Kingdome's going to be jammed again and rocking and rolling, and this club swept, talking about Seattle, swept the Yankees up there in a great series. I mean, nothing's to say they can't do it again against Cleveland.
Well, if the Mariners don't come back against Mesa in the ninth, We're looking at Randy Johnson against Dennis Martinez Tuesday night, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on NBC. What a matchup. The 3-2 pitch. In the air to right. Buhner. 2 down.
Nothing's routine tonight as far as fly balls go. That one was routine when it left the bat of Alomar, but with the wind blowing the way it has been all night long. Early rains today and heavy winds tonight. Raw and cold here in Cleveland. And Buhner with that ball moving toward the line. Again, nothing's routine here with the wind blowing the way it is.
Low-scoring game at 3-2, but the teams have had plenty of chances. The Mariners have left at least one man on in every inning. And I've got them with 9 left on for the game. The Indians have left 10. And there have been a few innings that have ended on double plays, so actually a larger total number of runners left out there. Not officially, but practically. Lofton fouls it back.
Oh, this kid's still bringing it. Bill Risley going right at him. Again, Seattle with one more shot here, down 3-2.
Here's something interesting. Cora, the second man due in the ninth, is 3 for 4 plus 4 walks lifetime against Mesa. And if they can get as far as Griffey, what has he done against Jose Mesa? 10 for 20 with a homer. One and one to Kenny Lofton. Has led the league in stolen bases 4 straight years. Had to really turn it on to catch Goodwin of Kansas City in the last week or so of this season. Hit .310 for the year. 3rd straight season he's top 300. Good young player. Locks this one into center field, and it drops for a hit. Ken Griffey Jr. has trouble with it. Lofton doesn't hesitate. That's going to be a single and an error, and it's going to be the 6th error in this game. 2 by Seattle, 4 by Cleveland.
Lofton may have gone for second on this play no matter what. He was really busting down the line, and when Griffey tried to make a backhanded play, Lofton, as I said, never hesitated. I think he may have wanted to go to second anyway to try and test Griffey, and that's what may have caused the boot by Griffey. And if indeed it is an error, it will be, as you said, Bob, the 6th in this game. It is. Single and an error to Griffey.
Which brings up Vizquel as 1 for 3 plus a walk. Rich Amaral, who is available on Lou Piniella's bench, is 3 for 6 lifetime against Mesa. Almost certainly Amaral will begin the 9th batting for Wilson. Then they'll get to Cora. Edgar Martinez, who's 1 for 16 lifetime against Mesa. And if somebody can get on, Griffey gets a whack at it. There goes the runner breaking for third, and Lofton has it stolen without a throw.
No contest and an easy steal at third for Lofton. I mean, Risley wasn't paying all that much attention to him, whether he scores from third or second. And again, a pass ball, a wild pitch gets him in now. But look at the lead. Look at the lead and the running start that Lofton had against Risley. He took one look at him and said, forget about it, and came to the plate.
Now the 2-0 to Vizquel. Bluffs a bunt, takes a strike.
Lofton with his third, second steal in this game tonight. The Indians center fielder.
Hargrove and Bell hoping for an extra run. Provide some margin of error from Mesa in the ninth. As you all know by now, that's the Goodyear Blimp Spirit of Akron, hovering over the ballpark in Cleveland.
I think it's not cold. Take a look at the face on some of these players, the faces on some of these guys. I mean, it's raw and windy. Stinging.
When you get jammed with a pitch on a night like tonight, where those bees are just buzzing through your whole body, not just the hands, all the way up your arms.
That's why those hitting gloves are so important, I guess, to a lot of guys, especially on a night like tonight. Very comfortable spot tonight in each dugout. With the heater, and there's Baerga with that hot water bottle.
The 2-2 to Vizquel. Liner, center field, Griffey, got there. Tumbling catch to preserve the utmost tension. Mesa will have a one-run lead to work with in the ninth.
Here's that inning-ending grab by Griffey on a ball that he almost lost. Liner hit by Vizquel, hit it like a rocket. Griffey with a quick charge, caught it, and almost, it looked like it almost popped away. Heck of a play to keep it a one-run game. Happy Mariners bench after that play by Ken Griffey Jr.
Mesa is in, of course. Amaral bats for Wilson. New third baseman Espinosa, Tomey out. New catcher Pena in place of Alomar. Amaral, as we said, 3 for 6 lifetime against Mesa. If he gets on, he's stolen 21 bases this year. To short, Vizquel, pretty close to automatic, 1 out. This 1995 League Championship Series game is brought to you by Bud Light. If you want great taste that won't fill you up and never let you down, make it a Bud Light. Nike, who encourages you to participate in the lives of America's youth. And Buick and your local Buick dealers. Remember Buick, the new symbol for quality in America. Here's Cora. 1 for 3, an infield single, plus a walk. Espinosa in on the grass at third. Center field, lofted into left center. The Indians are 1 out away from taking a 3-2 lead to Seattle.
Now both of these clubs will fly to the West Coast tonight, immediately following this game. They'll board charters and head for Seattle. Game 6 coming up on Tuesday.
Edgar Martinez, 1 for 19 in this series. 0 for 4 tonight. 1 for 16 lifetime against Mesa. Hoping to give Griffey a chance.
And look at Tony Pena. You don't think Tony Pena's fired up? Look at him. Let me have it, he said. Let me have it. Let it out. Air it out. Let me have it.
That one hit, as you see, was a homer. It's right there. Ooh, or at least it looked that way. Wow. McClellan says it's low, 1-1.
Another close call, Bob. Pena thought this pitch was a strike. Wow.
2 out of the 9th. Ramirez taking a look at this one, which is drifting foul.
And again, despite the fact that he's had a tough series and has had a tough time against Mesa, and here's the American League's best hitter in Martinez.
The wind tonight just pushed that one far foul. That's in the seats as well.
It was one of the few breaking balls that Mesa has thrown thus far. Down low and away, and a pretty good pitch, and Martinez just got a piece and fouled it off. Look at Pena, though. He's really pumped. He gives the sign, sets the sign down, and said, let me have it. Look at Tony. Right to me, baby.
Two and two. Mesa, all but perfect. 46 of 48 in save situations this year. An ERA, microscopic, 1.13. His 2-2 pitch. They're an out away, not only from seizing a 3-2 lead in the series, but an out away from forcing Randy Johnson to work again on 3 days rest in Game 6. Against Dennis Martinez, who will have a full week of rest when he takes the ball again. And Edgar Martinez hangs in at 2 and 2.
You know, he's had some pretty decent cuts against Mesa, and again, he's up there now against a guy who's got some velocity, in difference to what we saw earlier in Hershiser, who threw him a lot of breaking stuff down low and away. The off-speed stuff with Martinez, that's what's been giving him trouble in the series. The fact that he's out in front of everything, and Mesa's shaking off one.
We'll do it again. Edgar Martinez, 29 homers in the regular season. 3-run homer and a grand slam in Game 4 against the Yankees, which they trailed 5-0 in danger of having their season end at the Kingdome. Game-winning 2-run double, bottom of the 11th, in Game 5 of that division series. Full count to him now, but just about nothing. Just a measly infield single in this series against Cleveland.
Well, he's sitting 3-2 here, and there's nothing else to look for. I mean, you've got to look for fastball against Mesa here. Griffey coming next. And all you do is sit, look, and go.
Here it is on 3 and 2. Hit well to center field. Lofton turns. Lofton going way back near the fence to one-hand it and end it. That ball was smoked. But that's the way the series has gone for Edgar Martinez. Again, that last ball hit by Martinez hit like a rocket, and Lofton got back there in a hurry right near the wall. And luckily for the Indians, he didn't get any elevation on that ball. If he hits it in the air, it might go out of here. Tonight's Chevrolet player of the game could have gone to several people, including Hershiser. We choose Jim Thome for this homer in the 6th inning. In conjunction with this program, Chevrolet will contribute a total of $50,000 to the Boys and Girls Clubs of America in the names of all players of the game for the 1995 Major League Baseball season. Game 6, Thursday from the Kingdome, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. Bob Uecker and I will see you from there. The Indians win 3-2 to take a 3-2 lead in the series. Ueck,
See you in Seattle, buddy.
see you in the great Northwest. So long until then, everybody. Thanks for being with us.